Thank you. There are a couple of announcements this morning. First, the results of a closed session held on October 7th, 2008, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Oakdale Irrigation District et al. Versus County of Calaveras et al., Calaveras Superior Court Case Number 35081, County Counsel. Board action is that no action was taken. We also have another announcement. This is a notice of availability, immediate release of public review draft of Chapter 12, Economic Analysis, Calaveras County General Plan Baseline Report Supplement of October 14, 2008. As part of the general plan update process, the county has authorized the preparation of a baseline report documenting existing trends and conditions in the county. The original public review draft baseline report, chapters 1 through 11, was made available for a 30-day public review and comment period closing on March 11, 2008. Chapter 12, Economic Analysis, has been prepared as an addendum to that report and is hereby released for public review. Copies of Chapter 12, Economic Analysis, are available for review at the Calaveras County Community Development Agency at 891 Mountain Ranch Road. That would be here just across the way. San Andreas, California, 95249. The phone number there is 209-754-6394, and the fax is 209-754-6540. Document may also be reviewed or downloaded on the county's website at www.co.calaveras.ca.us/departments/gp-update.asp. Note that the above link includes an underscore in gp-update.asp. The 30-day public comment period in the document will run from Wednesday, October 15, 2008, until Thursday, November 14, 2008. Comments must be received by the county no later than 4 p.m. on November 14, 2008. Written comments should be sent to the Calaveras County Planning Department. Attention, Robert Sulman, Planning Director, 891 Mountain Ranch Road, San Andreas, California, 95249. Hope everybody will get engaged on that one. We've had a lot of comments in the board meetings of the past, and obviously economic issues are much on people's mind these days, so check it out and make sure your comments are known before final documents are prepared. We are now ready to consider the consent agenda. These are items that are expected to be routine and non-controversial, although they're not always so, and anybody can take any item off of this list for consent approval. Anybody on the board wish to remove an item? Any staff? Members of the public? Do I hear a motion for approval?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes on a 4-0-1. We will now take a 4-minute recess, and we'll move after that to item number 7, public comments. Those will be for items not on the agenda. All right, back in session, and does any member of the public wish to speak on an item not on the agenda? We would hope that the speaking would take less than 5 minutes per person and 15 minutes per topic.
Good morning. I'm Ray Malherbe. I'm the CEO at the fair, and I know most of you and have talked to most of you various times about a number of subjects. And we're not here to talk about those subjects or about asking for help with the county. What we'd like to do is clear up some possible misconceptions that are going on in the community. This is a community fair, and we want to make sure that things have been cleared up. There's been some information in the press coming from our last board meeting, and some information out in the community having to do with an FPPC complaint that was made and internal investigation that we did. and we would like to speak to that. Taliba Al-Rafiq is here with me. She was one of the members of the ad hoc committee that investigated the complaint, and she'd like to take a few minutes to explain the results of that to you. And also, I'd just like to take the time to mention that the fair has had a couple of community meetings in the past. We have another community meeting coming up next week on Tuesday at 5 p.m. in the Frogateria at Frogtown. Everybody here is welcome. The Board of Supervisors is certainly welcome at that time. We will be dealing mainly with off-season events and some of the things that we have decided to do internally, but it is open to the public. With that, I'd like to introduce Taliba, if I could.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. As Ray said, I was on the committee that looked at the complaint which was generated about one of our board members, the president, Steve Counts. And we didn't take this lightly. The committee, first of all, met with legal counsel, met with Ray to look over each item in the complaint and make a determination of their validity, first of all, and if they were valid, what we should do about those items. And of the complaint, 2 of the items were found that there was not enough information to substantiate or to investigate, so they were dropped. The other 2 items, namely being having the fair assume an administrative function with Ironstone Vineyards, where we provided parking services. The other was the Ironstone Concourse Foundation, where the fair provided administrative functions or administrative services and had been doing so for quite a couple of years. And that contract was up for renewal the 1st of January. Our recommendations to the board was to, first of all, as far as parking, to, after this past weekend, the final event of the year, to not go into any mutual agreement with Ironstone. And the second one, the memo of understanding, as well as the contract for Ironstone Concourse, was up for renewal, as I said, and we made a determination a recommendation not to renew that contract. Both of these events has ultimately cost the fair, in terms of revenue gen, between $12,000 and $15,000 a year. So compounding our current situation, now we are at another deficit of more than $12,000 to $15,000 a year. During this investigation, we also decided to look to see if there were any other areas that there were possibly any conflicts of interest between the fair and other community organizations. We found that our bank account with Pacific State Bank is also an item that is possibly a conflict of interest because the president of Pacific State Bank is on our board. We had that relationship prior to his being appointed on the board, and all of the appointments, as you know, are from the governor's office. As a result of that appointment, we found that, yes, there is a possible conflict of interest. However, that position, that bank account allows us to pay all of the bidding at the fair, at the auction. Instead of the students having to wait to get paid, we have a line of credit that offers us the opportunity to pay immediately. If we lose this bank account, then we may not be able to pay the students immediately for their auction. So at the board meeting, the fair board recommended that the fair board decided and voted that we would not remove that relationship at this time. And the fourth item was the relationship between the fair and the sheriff's office. We looked at that because we have a newly appointed member on the board, June Downham, who is the wife of our sheriff. And we looked at that and determined that there was not a conflict of interest, and we recommended that nothing be done on that issue. And the full board voted that in our favor as well, to say that, okay, there is not a conflict of interest in that item or that specific relationship. Those were the 4 items that we recommended an action from the board, and if you have any questions for me, I would be happy to answer any of your questions.
Taliba, how much money is involved in that account that has to be dispersed immediately to the sellers of the livestock?
It depends, and Ray can give you the specific amounts, but it depends year to year how much in revenue they are generating. It has gone up to $1 million.
We've been up. The line of credit has been up to $400,000 at times, and as low as about $120,000 to $130,000. It all depends on payments and how quickly payments come in from the buyers.
It's a substantial amount.
Taliba, Ray, I really do want to thank you for coming to the board. I mean, this is your issue. It's not the Board of Supervisors' issue, and I truly appreciate the courtesy extended to the county by your coming out, because you're right, there's lots of drama in the newspaper. But since you've come, I just had a question. I wasn't clear about the one on the concourse, because the concourse had never been at the fairground, and it's very tied in as a fundraiser for 4-H, and we have an ag fairground, so I just didn't.
Yeah, if I could interrupt. You're absolutely right, Marita, and the concourse really does fit within the mission of the fair: youth, agriculture, and so on. The Concourse Foundation was set up originally to raise funds for 4-H and FFA, for the State Fair Scholarship Fund, and then the last couple of years they've donated money to the Calaveras County Fair Scholarship Fund. And we felt it was a wonderful fit. But what happened through the complaint that was made by a community member here, things came up that were beyond that complaint. I think one thing that we need to make clear here is that the ad hoc committee found that there were no items in the complaint that were that had any validity. But because the complaint was raised, there were other things that came up when we talked to county council that brought up possible conflicts that go back to a law that was written in 1851 or 52, I believe, and it's called 1090. And it's a very strange law, and I don't know if it involves county, but it involves state officials, that says basically that a state official cannot enter into an agreement with the agency they represent, even if it's to the benefit of the agency. In both cases, with the Concourse Foundation and with Ironstone Vineyards and doing parking, both of those were to the advantage of the fair. Both of them brought revenue into the fair, as Taliba said, in the neighborhood of $15,000 or $16,000, plus the money that we got from Concourse for scholarship fund. Those we now no longer have because of the possibility of 1090. Now we face the situation with a possible 1090 violation with our agreement with Pacific State Bank, and we have to deal with that. So we're just bringing this out to let you know where we are. As I said earlier, there's just been a lot of rumors, a lot of innuendos floating around that there are some kind of secret things going on at the fair. We want to be as transparent and open as we can be, and to let everybody know there is no violation that we could see, that our ad hoc committee could find. But it opened the door to other things, and that now is causing us some concerns and some issues. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, we're used to rumors and innuendos. But, so does that mean when we go to the concourse again, we're not going to see the 4-H and FFA?
I can't answer that. I don't know what the concourse is going to do. We've just prepared a letter letting them know that we won't be able to renew our agreement with them. I doubt very much that it'll affect 4-H and FFA. That's, again, something that the Concourse Foundation would have to speak to, but that's what it was set up to do, and I think that will happen. Our position with them was to administer their foundation for them. I mean, we handled things like their entries and their tickets and those kinds of things, and didn't do anything as far as recommending where the money went.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to mention that when I read the article on Friday, it just seemed so paradoxical to me that we all have involvements and we have a willingness to participate in the community and my goodness, when you're the fact that you are involved in making a contribution brings your activities up to some additional level of scrutiny. It just seems so paradoxical. So I wanted to express my support for Ray and the board and suggested that they come here today. I personally, I feel very strongly that the fair, this is overstating the obvious, but the fair is a signature event for the county. It's probably the singular event that identifies us around the nation and the world. And I think that, Marita said that this is their issue, and it is. But as a member of the Board of Supervisors, Calaveras County, I really think that there needs to be an extension of our willingness to help. I don't know how we could do it, but I would sure like to see a study session scheduled.
Don't charge them for solid waste.
Well, that may be one of the things that we could do, but we have other issues on the agenda today that may put us further in jeopardy in the solid waste. But wouldn't you think that it would be worthwhile to just explore ways that we might be able to help them? And shoot, I could go sweep parking lots or something. Just anything.
Well, there's a suggestion you might want to consider on your next meeting.
Any help. I think I can speak for the Fair Board that they would appreciate a study session with the Board of Supervisors if that's what you would like to do.
All right. Well, I will poll the board for sentiment toward that end per Russ's and your suggestion. Supervisor Tryon?
Yes.
Supervisor Callaway?
No.
Supervisor Thomas?
Most assuredly, yes.
And I'll agree as well, so that's a 3-1. I hope that the study session will not intervene in whatever processes are being carried out by state and other agencies, that we'll be discussing the relationship between the county and the fair.
I have a question. What is the financial condition of the fair currently, and if you are still in a position of deficit, how is the Fair Board basically proposing to address that deficit?
Well, we are in a deficit. We anticipate that we will be at a deficit for the next few years. We have made, or the board has made, some very, very difficult decisions, probably the most difficult decision a board of the fair has had to make in a number of years, by taking some of the full-time staff and laying them off. We are looking at alternatives on how to deal with those issues. We have cut back on a number of items. As I said earlier, we've opened up to the community and had a couple of open forums to talk about the fair. That was the first one. To talk about off-season usage. Have gotten a lot of input from the community. We've taken the majority of the suggestions from the community to implement towards the 2009 fair. Because we're an early fair, our budget is due in the 1st of October to the state. So we had to do our fair planning basically early, and we took many of those ideas and put them into play for next year's fair. There will be some changes, some focus changes on entertainment, those kinds of things. But we have made a commitment to reduce our deficit by $50,000 a year, and the board is moving forward in that direction.
What is the total amount of the deficit?
The deficit at the end of this year is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000.
Okay. My last question is that obviously one of the solutions is to generate more revenue.
Correct.
And we used to have one or two kind of summer events, et cetera. Is the fair board working at some alternative events other than the county fair to see if we can generate additional revenues rather than, sort of focusing on cutbacks?
We are. That was the last open forum, and that's going to be part of the next open forum that we have next week. There have been a number of suggestions. As we pointed out to the community at the time, the fair, because of its financial position, is not able to sponsor those events. So we have to go out and find other promoters to put those events on. We are currently doing that. We continue to do that. There were some wonderful ideas that came out of that last open forum. This next one will be more of a reporting back to the community and further discussion on some of the items that came up a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. When do you think you will conclude your open sort of forums and as the fair board?
Well, I think we'll be able to come up with a report on our off-season usage after this next meeting.
Okay.
I think as far as the open forum, that's something we're probably going to continue to do maybe 3 or 4 times a year. Okay. The board felt it was very productive, and I think the community that attended, community members that attended, felt it was very productive.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
I'll assume that the administration will get together with the fair board, pick an appropriate date for a study, time and date for a study session sometime in November or December.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Other comments from the public?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Jerry Tabaracci. I'm here to talk to you about taxes. And if I received my tax notice from the assessor showing that my taxes went up. I don't have a problem with taxes going up, but I do have a problem when my home property has been reduced and devaluated because of the economy. As you can see, it went up $300 on the first page. If you go over to the second page, and I pulled this off the website, but I couldn't print the graph. For some reason, the graph wouldn't print. Homes a year ago were $328,000 and have been reduced down to $212,000 within 1 year. 1 month alone, for the month of September, the property went down 3.5%. That's a big depreciation. I understand the Proposition 13 allows the assessor to do between a 1% to 2% increase in taxes. But then also you have Proposition 8, which you have a copy of it, and on page 2 and 3, it shows that if there is a reduction in the economy, that the taxes should be reduced at the same time. Now, I'm not just talking for myself, because I can go over there and fight the tax assessor, but there's people who can't fight it and refuse to fight it, and I've talked to a number of them already. So it's up to the Board of Supervisors to meet with the assessor over there and talk to them about reducing the taxes across the board. Some people in Calaveras County's taxes have been reduced that I talked to without them even going over there. And some people have been raised. In my case, it's been raised, and 2 other people that I talked to had theirs raised. And it's not fair to them because they're not able to fight for themselves. So that's what I'm doing here today. I'm asking you people to fight for them and fight for the public in Calaveras County. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry, you may want to know that we have been holding workshops in different districts, and the District 2 workshops for homeowners to talk about their tax rights will be happening shortly, and we'll be putting out announcements on that.
Well, you know me, Steve. I mean, I can go over there and I can fight with the best of them.
Yes, you're
You know,
more than
and,
capable.
I don't mind doing that. You know, it's either fight with you folks or fight with my wife. And believe me, you guys are a lot easier than my wife. Thank you.
All right.
I would also like to respond, Mr. Tabarachi. Is that
Yes.
Jerry? Just
I was out the door to go over to the SS office.
okay. This has been an element or an issue of great concern to the board for several months now. I started, I think, first with 2 sessions in District 5, public outreach. It was advertised in the paper to have people come and have the assessor actually come to the community to explain the methodology for requesting a reduction under Prop 8. We have reduced about 11,000 property values this year, and the indication is that there may be more forthcoming. But we've already been on this, and I appreciate you coming to bring it up again, because it is very much a concern to many people. So.
In my personal opinion, we haven't seen the bottom of this. You got the credit cards coming in, and you're talking about 98% of the people in America have credit cards, and that's going to be bigger than anything that you've ever seen. And all I can say is that, you know, sometimes we have to cut back. This is the time when we have to cut back. You know, I don't mind paying taxes. But, you know, I just love arguing with people over those taxes.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Then you need to go to the assessor's office.
That's
where he's headed.
Okay.
If you're listening in, Randy,
Here he comes.
expect a visitor shortly.
Someone's on his way.
Good morning, supervisors. My name is Terry Strange. Most of you probably know me. I have a biological and environmental consulting company here in the county. What I'm here to talk about segues perfectly into Mr. Walensky, the chairman's comment earlier about the economic times and economic issues that face us today. Just so that you know, I've not talked or engaged with other construction and or other consulting companies in Calaveras County, but certainly I think what I have today to request of you is something that we're all concerned about and hopefully we would all want to support. I am here to respectfully request that you consider drafting and passing a county resolution to support the hiring of local contractors and consultants for county construction projects as an attempt to support local businesses or companies and jobs in these current economic times. Basically, the old adage of let's keep the money local. I don't know that anything like this has happened in the past, but I do want to share with you, in 2004, I called, and it's so long ago and my memory, of course, isn't what I wish it was. I had called an individual in the county planning, and I asked to be put on a list of qualified, certified, however the process has to happen, as consultants that could provide services, certainly interested in providing services to a variety of development and related types, including water districts and all in the county. And I was told there is no such a list available, but that if I would email him some information, he would be more than happy to include that in a program that doesn't exist, I guess, if I could paraphrase. So obviously something like this requires certain expertise and qualifications. It may require liability insurance that not all companies are willing to or can bring into their particular economic or at least professional background. I certainly, speaking for myself, can attest to not only being able to meet qualifications of other consulting firms that frequently get county contracts from Sacramento, from Lodi, and other areas even further away, that in many ways I have expertise that far exceed those expertise of that staff, as well as the fact that because I'm a, quote, small shop, I can do it for a much less cost, which is something I would expect or certainly think that we would all be interested in, saving money. So to follow up with that, though, I would like to use the example of the Criminal Justice Center project. It is currently, the RFQ deadline was October 7th. When I went in and read all the information that was available on the website, there was nothing in there at all that addressed the environmental or biological needs of that project that are yet to be completed. I was able to copy, and I did that and made notes on the biological resources section of the mitigated neg deck. And in there they identified elderberry surveys, wetland delineations that need to be done, oak woodland surveys. There are a number of local folks here that have that opportunity to provide those services. So I'm not here to create a job for myself per se, just opportunities for like-minded businesses. When I read that, then I attempted through emails and the existing structure to request information on how I could be put into a list or provide my RFQs for a segment of that project, including the biological resources. I got a canned email back saying, see this, this, and this. When we went in and looked at, I and my wife both, when we went in and looked at the information that was available, it led us nowhere. The RFQs are based upon construction companies coming in and building stuff. That's not me. Okay, I don't have a construction company. I never will. I don't have a contractor's license, but I do have an expertise that construction companies do not have. So this is just one example of, I don't know if the airport hangar now and other projects as they come up with the county, I think there's a better way maybe of doing things that would possibly support local businesses and keep the economy here. I'd like to suggest possibly the idea as Tuolumne County does. They maintain a list of actually a list of qualified consultants that a developer like a Castle and Cuckoo promises to create certain number of jobs locally. They can go to that list and say, here are not only all the qualified folks, but here are those folks within the county that could possibly provide us with those services. So without going into any more detail, I appreciate your time. Thank you for your ear, and hopefully something can be worked out.
Thank you.
My turn.
Are we solvent yet?
Yes, and that's why I'm here. Good morning. Lynn Norfolk, Calaveras County Treasurer, Tax Collector. The tax collector sent the tax bills out, not the assessor, by the way, recently, and the phone calls are attesting to that. But the tax dollars are coming in as well. And the gentleman that was here before, of course, is being sent to the proper department to look at the values. And, that's just a side note on this morning. Because I'm really here to tell you that, yes, the tax dollars are coming in, but Marita had suggested that it might be a good idea to just have a brief recap of what the county investment portfolio looks like. So I'm here as your county treasurer. And as you well know, the investors of public funds, which is what I do, part of my hat, we're being met with many challenges at this time of unprecedented turmoil in the markets and a dramatic realignment of good old Wall Street. And I would like to take a few moments to share with you, the board, a few positive comments with regard to our county investment portfolio. I have made a snapshot of our balance sheet today to show you what the makeup of the portfolio is. I'll give these to Madeline to pass out to you. I think that's enough there. Just to give you a flavor of where we're at. and I won't be long because you've got lots of things to do today. The county portfolio is rather boring and bland, and as far as I'm concerned, that's a wonderful way to be in this particular time. We have about $40 million in LAIF, which is the Local Agency Investment Fund, through the state. It's a strong program which is protected from the state's woes and problems these days and earns a reasonable rate of return. We have about $20 million in CAMP, which is the California Asset Management Program. It's a joint powers authority utilized by many county and local jurisdictions. The program's makeup is viewed as stable by our county investment advisors. U.S. Treasuries represent nearly $10 million and are considered the safest fixed income investment today. It's something that I didn't have in the portfolio until within the last 6 to 10 months. But it's proving to be something that we need to do. Federal agency securities make up the next largest portion of the portfolio, with holdings in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac programs, as well as the Farm Credit Bank, Tennessee Valley Authority, Federal Home Loan Bank. All hold AAA ratings, with no one program holding more than the authorized amount by the government code. So we're in good shape there, too. Corporate notes and commercial paper. We have about $7 million. These are the holdings that are, we're really constantly monitoring. They're good companies. They're great companies here. They're being monitored all the time for credit quality and other factors by our investment advisors, Chandler Asset Management. We have no exposure to loss of principal through holdings with Lehman Brothers or Bear Stearns. Thank God. It's certainly unfortunate, however, that other municipalities are having to deal with problems with these companies, that municipalities and some other counties in the state, because when those investments were purchased several years ago, those companies were extremely strong companies. We have an active oversight committee, which Marita can attest to because she's your representative on the board. We meet quarterly with a makeup of the treasurer, the board rep, admin, auditor, and the schools as one of the larger contributors. We discuss the economy with our investment advisors there. We look at the makeup of the portfolio, answer questions, help project budget situations for schools and some of the bigger investments, and are not investments participants, as well as the county itself, you know, with the admin office. I want to assure you that your treasurers, me, highest priority is working with our investment advisors to monitor the securities in the portfolio on a day-to-day basis in an effort to navigate these difficult and uncharted investment waters we're faced with today. So with that, that's my little 10-minute spiel. I don't want to take much time, but if you have major questions at all, other than the fact that I'm leaving as soon as I can for a conference in Burlingame, and I'll be gone the rest of the week, you of course know that you're always welcome in my office. If you have questions from constituents, anything that we need to talk about or discuss or be aware of, I'm there. So I thank you for your time. Anything that you want to?
Any questions from the board?
I had asked Lynn to come before the board based on what we read in last week's Enterprise, and I thought the public and or the board might have questions about who are we invested with and what our portfolio looks like. So thank you, Lynn. I appreciate it.
And as I say, I'm always there if you do have questions, because this is uncharted waters for many of us. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Supervisor Callaway, for suggesting the report.
Good morning, Mary Mutz, Agricultural Commissioner. I would like to bring to your attention a proposal from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and an upcoming meeting. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service once again is proposing to designate over 4,000 acres in Calaveras County as critical habitat for the red-legged frog. It is the same area in the county that they proposed in 2006, an area in Valley Springs which is bordered by Highway 26 and Paloma Road. The Fish and Wildlife Service will be holding a public meeting here in the county on October 30th. It is not a public hearing, it is a public meeting. It will be open to the public for questions and answers. They plan to give a short presentation and then open it up to questions and answers for the local constituents or anyone that cares to be at that meeting. The meeting will be on October 30th, a Thursday, at 2 o'clock in the Sequoia Room. The Sequoia Room is located in the CalWorks building at the corner of Mountain Ranch Road and Highway 49. And the Fish and Wildlife Service plans to release a press release today to our local media sources. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other people on? Yes.
Very briefly, with regard to rumors and innuendos and public government available to the public. We've seen the fairgrounds, we've seen the tax assessor's office. We see local government working with the people, working with the community, open to the public, and you folks, exactly the same thing. You do a great job. I think this is an amazing country. I just want to thank you for it. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell.
Good morning. Tim McSorley, Council of Governments. I wanted to just come over this morning and invite you all. I think you've all actually received an invitation to our San Andreas Rural Mobility Plan Immersion Week beginning tomorrow. If you recall, the Council of Governments was successful in a grant application. We received $80,000 with a $20,000 match by the COG to prepare this San Andreas plan. It includes multimodal types of considerations. It includes traffic calming issues. It includes pedestrian amenities, all in the hopes of making San Andreas more attractive for visitors and businesses to come in and locate here. I do have some extra invitations. It is open to the public, and the public is certainly encouraged to participate. Immersion Week is a very concentrated effort to engage the community. We have, for 2 days, we have what we call some walkabouts where members of the community will tour the town and take a look at opportunities that they think we can incorporate into a plan, and we'll bring it back to the Council of Governments probably in the next 6 to 8 months for approval, and we would also hope and anticipate that we bring it to the Board of Supervisors for inclusion in some of its planning efforts. So again, I encourage the public to come, invite the board, administration, and anyone to participate.
I just need to piggyback on Tim's comments. It's sort of a little skewed comment, but the county has not adopted the bicycle and pedestrian plan, and because of that, we are missing out on potential grants. And there was a due date this month for one. I believe it was this month. And for representing a community that has a lot of bicycle and pedestrian people, and I'm not the only one, and we have the Arnold Mobility Plan, I'm very disappointed that the county has not adopted it, and I don't want it to wait until the general plan, because it'll be having a huge 10-foot snowstorm in San Andreas before that happens. So that's my editorial comment, that I would like us to adopt it.
And what is holding us up from doing so?
We can discuss that at another time. It's not an agenda. I just thought I would say it's out there, and it has not been approved by the board. It has been approved by the COG. and it's been close to a year since we have, and it's unfinished business. Thank you, Mr. McSorley, for allowing me to pontificate on that, along with the oak ordinance, the dark sky ordinance. Anyway, thank you.
If I might take the moment to echo the same sentiment, I would hope that this could, we saw the original draft, we saw what was passed by the COG. I can't imagine what's taken a year to get this in front of us, but I would hope that people responsible for getting it in front of us do bring it back forthwith. Any questions for Mr. McSorley? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Wait, I do. I'm sorry, colleagues. Tim, Saturday is the EIR review in Bear Valley. Are you and Planning and Public Works attending, coordinating comments, or do I get to do it?
It's a public meeting.
Right.
It's not really a
I'll be
review of
there.
the EIR. I am trying to get Tyler to free up some time. I have another commitment.
I mean, I'm going.
Okay.
So,
and I haven't heard from the Planning or Public Works departments here in the
okay,
county.
that's fine. I'll take care of it. Thank you.
Thanks again. Any other members of the public wish to speak to items not on the agenda? In that case, we will move to item number 8. This is a discussion and possible action regarding a minute order authorizing County Administrative Office to submit applications for Prop 40 per capita grant funds. And I believe Shirley Ryan is the staff responsible for this large report here.
I am. Good morning. Shirley Ryan, Assistant County Administrator. In the beginning of September, the County Administrative Office plus in conjunction with the Parks and Rec Commission held a study session with the Board of Supervisors to review the Prop 40 projects to determine whether or not we should move forward on them and to make recommendations to reallocate or allocate any funds that weren't previously allocated. The board, we also at the time discussed the possibility of using a portion of the Prop 40 funds for administrative costs in the form of an extra hire or contract person to help move forward with the projects and acts as a liaison between the community groups, the County Administrative Office, and the Park and Rec Commission. Since that time, the Park and Rec Commission met on September 17th to further discuss those projects and the possibility of using some funds out of Prop 40 for the administrative costs. And it was their recommendation that $45,000 be used from certain projects to fund either an extra hire or contract position to work and help move those projects forward. Also, since that study session, it came to light that the Sandy Gulch Park, Regional Park, that was slated to be purchased from Calaveras Water District was not a viable project due to issues with the soil. So in the meeting with the Commission on September 17th, there was a discussion of new projects and recommendations put forth by the Commission for those projects. When you received your original board packet, it was based on what came out of that meeting. However, things have changed a little bit since then, and Commissioner Pat McGreevy has been working diligently right up and through yesterday. And what you have before you today is an additional information, and that is a new minute order. Behind the minute order is a spreadsheet, and what it shows is what was originally allocated by district, and then what is the recommendations of the Parks and Rec Commission and how those funds should now be allocated, and that ties to the minute order. Basically, with all other districts, it is the recommendations that were put forth in the study session. However, in District 2, instead of the $240,000 being used to purchase the land from CCWD, there are now 4 projects. One is, and in the minute order, I tried to make them a little bit more generic, and I tried to combine projects when such as the Genuine Veterans District, they already had money set aside or allocated for their soccer field and lighting. There was an additional recommendation for an allocation to upgrade the gazebo. So we wrapped that into one item on the minute order just to make it easier. And that way we can either, based on our conversations with the state, continue to submit it as 2 separate projects or combine it into one and change the scope. There is also a change of scope for the original Moke Hill Veterans District for the Hobbs Ball Field. It was for lighting, and based on issues there, we've changed it to upgrades to allow it to be changed for upgrades to the bleachers and snack bar, etc. There were 2 projects that weren't included in the original packet, and that was the gazebo project and the one for San Andreas Elementary School. Those are also, descriptions are included in that packet you received this morning. And to speak a little bit about the projects for District 2, one is to purchase land that is very close to the original park site. It's kind of across the street. If anybody's familiar or has with that area for a long time, it's the site of what used to be a Little League ball field. It's on the sweeping corner of Highway 26 near Associated Office Road. And what they're looking to do will be develop that back into a ballpark, baseball park, and soccer field. The second one is for a skateboard ramp in West Point at the youth center. One is to deal with the water system for the community park in Mountain Ranch. And the final one is for upgrading the heating and air conditioning system in the community hall in Moke Hill. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And Pat McGreevy's also here to answer any questions.
Before we get into questions, I'd like to recognize something that's pretty significant here. There were reports that you actually reported to work on Columbus Day to complete this. Yes, you've been reported. And the dedication you showed in seeing that this is complete and before us, and the Commissioner McGreevy and his work, which was about 24/7 for the last 4 weeks to recover from the loss of the other park, and the individuals from Mountain Ranch and from West Point, from Wilseyville, from Moke Hill. We've got several different recreation groups and areas in our district, but all the people came together to be able to salvage as a kind of Hail Mary that was caught in the end zone here. And your leadership, McGreevy's hard work, and all the volunteers that participated actually allowed this to come before us in a proper and complete way. Can't thank you enough for that. Any questions from the board?
One other thing I wanted to mention in it is in the minute order, and this was one of the things that the Parks and Rec Commission was concerned about, was that if for some reason we didn't spend all the money in administrative costs, that would be prorated back to projects within those districts, because it was determined that $9,000 per district from their projects would be contributed or allocated for the administrative cost. Also, that if any projects for whatever reason were determined not to be viable as they move forward, that those monies would be reallocated to an existing project within that district. And I just wanted to make sure that the supervisors were aware of that.
Right.
That is a recommendation.
Is it your presumption that that is implied by this minute order?
I believe
that's incorporated.
I incorporated it in the minute order, yes.
All right. If it is not in the exact language, I would assume that by our vote, should we pass this minute order, that we would be including that sentiment in it.
If it's not, we'll amend it to make sure it is, but I can look real quick.
All right.
I wrote it a few weeks ago.
a concern on that. We have 2 years left, and we might not know for a year or so which will be go, no go once the state reviews these. And so if there's funds left, and we say, well, it goes back to the district, which all of us would like, and there isn't a project, or it's one where we have to start the process all over because it's something different. I mean, surely my concern is if it can't go, if for whatever reason the water system doesn't go in District 2, and then they say, well, let's scramble and find something else. It's such a long process.
It's not
Scramble time
finding-
actually ended at, I guess, 9 o'clock this morning.
Well, I mean,
there's no other projects, at least by the recommendation of the commission.
that's not what you...
There will not be any new projects. They will be allocated to an existing project.
Okay, so, just sort of saying, but you could then have to expand on it. I mean, I'll use my district because maybe I know it, because I know it better. Something is not approved. I'm not going to pick one, but one is not approved. And so we say, well, okay, then we're going to give it to White Pines Park for something. But then we're going to expand on it, which is above what we've submitted to the state. Are we starting then the process over again?
Now, what we submit to the state is a request for an adjustment to the amount for the project.
Wow.
And if it's an approved project, in fact, I can use an example with the Bret Hart Sports Complex. The initial allocation for was $130,000. Based on the recommendations in here, they want to increase that amount. What we will do is write a letter to the state saying Project 05, whatever the number is, was at $130,000. We request an increase in allocation of funding to X amount of dollars, and we will give them a revised cost estimates. And then they will either say yes or no to that effect. But we do not have to go through and submit the whole project once again.
I just see some holes in it. I mean, I don't want to give the money back.
Right.
I would, as far as I'm concerned, it should be open to wherever it could be used, not necessarily district specific.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
That's
Yes. Are you complete?
If I understand the concern here, the goal, the minute order needs to be revised, I think, because this says that if a project is no longer viable, the board will reallocate those funds. So I read that as saying it would have to come back to the board for that reallocation. Not a problem, but I think you should be aware that this does say that it comes back here.
It does say that the board will reallocate the funds to an existing project within the district, but yes, it does require it to come back to the board to change the minute order. Now, if the board chooses to allow that to be done at the discretion of either the Parks and Rec Commission or...
no, administration. My concern is we are going to be down to the last 6 months, and by the time we get it to the board, and the board sends it to Park and Rec, I mean, we're now down to 2 months. I mean, I want this moving, and I want it on as fast a track as we can do it, and if we have to keep coming back and forth every time a project is not submitted, I would like some discretion of staff to be able to put it where it will be accepted. This is for the county, not just our respective districts, though everything allocated to my district will remain the same.
The minute order can be amended if you want to give that discretion to staff. However, and I believe that with a person dedicated to just moving forward with those projects, and one of the requirements when the Parks and Rec Commission looked at these new projects was to have as much of the information available for the application as possible. Obviously, land tenure agreements and that type of thing are not necessarily included because those do have to come before the board. But a good portion of the work has been done so that in moving forward with the projects, we have the information we need. Plus, having a person that will be dedicated and working to move those projects forwards will be essential and hopefully will cause less delays than in the past.
If I might make one comment on this rather awkward procedure that's now taken several years, it does seem to me that it calls for us to try to get a dedicated park-specific agency or department going. I personally favor a park and rec district, but I know that there are other ideas around. My hope is that after we get a master parks plan and become eligible for Quimby funds, that we move very quickly to getting a proper group together to do this. It's been a time-sucking arrangement. It's better to have people who are 100% familiar with the processes and not also required to handle a heavily burdened county budget process and many other duties as assigned. So I'm, while you have been heroic in filling the gap, it does seem to me that we owe you a better arrangement than this as soon as we can find a way to arrange it.
Well, let me just say a couple comments in defense of staff. Is when these Prop 40 monies came, staff came to the board and said, do not spread this money around. You better come down with one project or two projects. It's going to come down to land tenure. You'd better own the land, et cetera. And the board chose, or some board members anyway, chose to ignore that and put either too many projects in because they wanted the goodwill of lots of people, or they put in projects that were not going to meet the eligibility requirements. And every time staff has come before the board since Prop 40 passed, they have reemphasized that point, and yet here we are 2 years away, and we still have projects that don't belong in the mix and should have never been in the mix. And staff has basically tried to process them because the board has insisted that they try to process them, even though staff advised strongly against doing so. So, just having a full-time Parks and Recs person isn't going to change anything if the board doesn't pay attention to what they're being told on how these funds have to be allocated. That completes my comments.
It was the intent of my comments to take it completely out of our domain and into an agency that does not have all these kinds of dynamics within it. That would be a Park and Rec commission and district. At any rate, is there any discussion on this minute order, or shall we hear a motion?
I would just like to ask if there's any movement on recruitment for the position, and if we approve this, how soon could somebody be sitting in that chair?
I would need to speak with HR regarding what the next steps would be. However, it is interesting to note that after the September 2nd study session, I received 3 emails and a resume that was dropped off in the office for the position. So there's interest out there.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So the question council brought up is that the board will reallocate funds to the existing project within the same district. And did we want to modify that or not?
And did you want it to come back to the Board of Supervisors for that reallocation, or give it to the discretion of either the Parks and Rec Commission or staff?
Before getting to the answer to that, why don't we take public comment? I note that there seem to be a number of people from a wide range of park and rec interests out there. Does anybody wish to address the board?
Good morning. I'm Bill Schmidt. I'm here this morning on behalf of the Central Calaveras Fire District. We own the property on which the Mountain Ranch project is based, and by virtue of the fact that this project has moved around quite a bit and had various incarnations and whatever, we are on record as a board as approving anything that the other entities want to do. We do have currently a 5-year lease with 4 5-year options to renew with the Mountain Ranch Youth Alliance. They keep asking us to. We need a 10-year deal. It's like they can have a 10-year deal. All they have to do is exercise 1 or 2 of their, just exercise the option. It's $1 a year lease. It's not I'd be happy to pay the $5 a year, whatever, individually. But we believe they already have the legal sufficiency that they need to do this project in light of the requirements of Prop 40, and we support whatever they would like to do. Just sort of leave us out of it. That's we don't want to get involved anymore.
So, Bill, you'd be willing to give a 10-year lease?
They have a 5-year lease with if they exercise.
Doesn't work.
Huh?
It's got to be. We have the.
They can exercise all 4 of their options right now, and they'll have a 25-year lease. I'm in the real estate business.
Yeah.
I actually know that actually does.
Well, it didn't work for White Pines Park. We had a 5-year. They had a perpetuity 5-year lease with CCWD. The state would not accept it. They had to have a 10-year lease.
We won't get if they just if they need a 10-year lease. We have no problem with that. We just weren't able to get it on our agendas to do that until our next board meeting. If that's after the 1st of November, if that's a problem for somebody, I want you to know that that we're already on record on a polling basis that we're happy to do that for them.
I think Bill is explaining why the 10-year lease is not in this packet, but it's the fire board's intent to execute the required Prop 40.
We are on record in our approved minutes state that. So we're not. We don't want to be. We want to be an agent for making these things happen instead of a reason why they haven't. So that's why I'm here, and I'm also the guy that waters the ball fields. Make sure that happens.
Yes, thank you, Bill.
Pat McGreevy, Commissioner from District 2. I'd like to say that in the D2 packets, that the lease is in there, all the agreements you'd ever want between whoever you'd want them between are all in there. So our packets, we think, are quite complete and ready to go to County Council for their evaluation. I'd also like to say about the redistribution of funds. Boy, D2 can sure absorb a lot of funds, like real quick. We reduced every project down to bare bones. Take the Youth Alliance in West Point. I know right now, that in addition to what the $28,000 that we've allotted for their skate ramp, we could give them about another $35,000 and it would disappear quickly. As far as this purchase of Sandy Gulch Field, we call it, I estimate $135,000 is going to be needed to take that lot and produce a ball diamond with all the facilities. So there's $135,000. Moke Hill, we cut them from $40,000 back to $25,000. All these are just changes in scope, and we can get rid of money quickly. In addition to those changes in scope, only this morning at 7 o'clock did I eliminate West Point Elementary School for $68,000, and we'd reduce them from $100,000 down to $68,000. So there's another project that we can transfer funds to quickly. School districts ready to move. Agreements are pretty much settled, so we can get rid of a lot of money quickly in D2. I know that D4 has no problems getting rid of money. D5 has been giving money to D4, so there's no problem. And I really can't speak for San Andreas. for District 1. But I think it behooves the supervisors to make sure that their commissioners have a packet of projects that are ready to go in their file. This packet of projects serves another purpose, is that in the master plan, which we're made significant progress on, the next step is to put together a plan that goes from pocket parks at the neighborhood level up through district parks, up through Calaveras County parks. And so this exercise we've been going through in D2 really puts us in D2 in a great position, because we have all these little folders of projects that need to be done, and all I have to do now is map them out and put them in and organize them for the master plan. So I would encourage each of you, with your supervisors, to work with your public to get this network done. I can say that, yeah, the master plan is begging for this information right now. That's it.
Yes, one moment.
I just have a question. The original proposal that I saw included for Mountain Ranch
Yes.
a lease, an agreement with a private business owner, and I don't see that in here. That seems to have been changed, improved.
As it turned out, about a week ago, the Blunder Inn well is the one you're speaking about, which was going to serve as the source of water for Mountain Ranch community clubs, etc. Their lawyer advised strongly against providing water, and based on liability issues. At that point, we moved to the fire department well, which Bill Schmidt just described. So when we moved to the fire department well, we had to redo all our agreements and leases once again.
Thank you.
By the way, I can tell you that tomorrow I'll submit to probably Shirley a CD with all this paperwork on there, so you'll have all this electronically to help you get on with what you need to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak before we move our deliberations back to the board? All right, what's your pleasure, board?
Okay, I'll give you mine. On the minute order, I would like to say the project's no longer viable. The Board of Supervisors will reallocate those funds, period.
Fine.
We might not have the luxury of doing what we want, and I just think we should be a little more ecumenical as a board, and so therefore when we get down to those time frames, I think the intent would be to give it to the district. If for some reason it's not going to work, as far as I'm concerned, it should go to where it could be used. Jim?
Just comment on that. That last phrase is a little gratuitous. It wouldn't be binding on a future board anyway. A future board could change that direction.
Uh-huh. So you're saying just leave it in and
I'm
not be
saying it
gratuitous?
expresses this board's intent today, but it wouldn't bind a future board.
That's true for even an ordinance.
Right.
Anyway, Steve asked my opinion and I gave it.
Anybody else wish to have an opinion? I'll state mine. I actually think that a previous Board of Supervisors wisely allocated in equal numbers between districts. And I imagine that kept a lot of discussion from happening over time, that allowed certain autonomy within districts. And it also recognized that while we could have argued about whether some districts have been more advantaged by their economics than others, or some districts may have lost facilities over the last number of years and might be in need of greater funds, we simply allocated it fairly. It is true that there are some districts that are much more advanced, and for reasons of history and and volunteer effort in their areas managed to get great ballparks, Feeney being a good example. I want to make sure, however, that those that are just getting started or have had serious setbacks over the last number of years don't wind up having funds that had been intended for them, as long as there is a viable project that can take place. And I think that's what Supervisor Callaway is getting to. If we wind up with nothing viable and no reallocation within district, that it would be appropriate to then move it outside of district. And my hope is that we can come up with language that does not completely eliminate where it says we'll reallocate those funds to an existing project within the same district. Maybe we can say something like to an existing viable project within the same district. And viable would mean very specifically that it could be accomplished within the time frames and economics that form the restrictions of this.
And there is no viable project.
And if
there is no way. I mean, I'm just leaving it open so we don't set up this bureaucracy either among ourselves. The intent was District 3 gave money to District 4. You know, I mean, this is for the youth of Calaveras County and for adults, I mean, not just the youth. And my feeling is if my district can't use the money, let it go to where it's needed. And I would like to think that would be true for all of us, and that we don't have to specify. It doesn't say very much for us if we have to specify. We're going to get down to, Shirley, just make it work. So that's, you know, we've got 6 months left, put it where it can be used. So that's why I thought that should be the intent of making the change. So
could that spirit be equally arrived at by saying that the Board of Supervisors will reallocate those funds to a viable existing project within the same district, or if none is found, to any other
no, we'll reallocate those funds to a viable existing project, period. You know what, Steve? I don't care. The point is I really don't care. If I can't use it and something in my district doesn't come up, all of you are welcome to the money.
Well, that's exactly the sentiment I share.
And I don't
if you
think
can't use
I need
it,
to. But that's just going to be up to this person we're going to hire, and they're going to come in and say, Marita, this is not a good project. It's going to take you 10 months to get something or to find something. I'm going to say, fine, give it to where it can be used in the county, whether it's Sandy Gulch or Feeney or the Veterans District, doesn't matter to me.
Might as well put it towards the Bret Hart Sports Complex.
Bret Hart. When in doubt, put it in Bret Hart. So that's, that's for me, it is a matter of not being so bureaucratic, which is, it doesn't speak well of us as a board
I think we're
to have to specify. But if that's important to you, that's fine.
So let us move forward.
I agree. Let's move forward.
On the basis of what language? We have two different...
Whatever you want.
Well, I'd like to be able to find language, and maybe we can simply give this to staff, that is essentially what Marita's talked about, which is that we would give it to viable projects within district. Finding none, it would be reallocated outside of district.
Can I ask you, because it seems to me the fundamental question is whether the board's retaining the final decision on this or staff is, because this language would be binding on staff. Staff, whatever you do, would be directed by staff and could not be changed without coming back to the board. If the board's going to retain the final decision, then this language really doesn't particularly matter, because that board can do whatever that board wants at the time.
The final decision regarding any change from the current allocation, right, as opposed to saying staff, whatever reallocation is necessary for viable projects within the district, staff has the administrative authority to execute on your behalf. That'd be through the CAO's office. But staff would be free, if there are no viable projects, to return to the board and say, you know, we couldn't fund anything in District 8, so we're going to recommend that you adopt this transfer into District 9. I mean, I think that's what we're talking about here.
Are you okay with that as an approach?
That's fine. I don't even want it coming back to the board.
So we're set.
We've
We're settled.
spent 4 years on this, and
All right, so we would be passing the minute order as amended by that statement.
So move.
There's a motion. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes on a 4-0-1. All right. We'll now move to item number 9, discussion and possible action regarding a resolution authorizing boundary line adjustment for Oneto Raider. This is Department of Agriculture.
Well, good morning, Mary Mudd, Commissioners. The Onetos and the Raiders jointly own property restricted by California Land Conservation Contract number 249, and both parties, the Onetos and the Raiders, are seeking approval of a boundary line adjustment. When land is restricted by a California Land Conservation Contract, there are additional requirements which must be met if the owners wish to do a boundary line adjustment. And those requirements are that the board must discuss 7 findings prior to the approval of the adjustment. Those 7 findings and the discussion pertaining to each finding are included in your packet, as well as all the maps indicating what the land looks out like now and the layout of the land after the adjustment will occur. And the reason for this boundary line adjustment is to accommodate a fence line. On September 9th, the Agricultural Advisory Committee met, reviewed the 7 findings as they are presented in your packet, and the committee recommends that the board accept the findings as they are presented in your packet and approve the boundary line adjustment. Therefore, staff is seeking approval of a resolution authorizing the boundary line adjustment for Lance and Wanda Oneto and Leroy and Sandy Raider. Members of the Oneto family and the Raider family are here to answer any questions that you may have of them, and I am also here to help with any questions of staff.
Are there any questions from the board?
None for me.
Mr. Chair, then I would move the resolution with the acceptance of the findings as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes on a 4-0-1. We now move to the next item on the agenda, which is a discussion, and this is item 10, discussion and possible action regarding minute order authorizing chair to execute non-renewal of California Land Conservation Contract number 214, Aracastane.
Peter and Marilyn Hospital entered into this contract, number 214, in 1987 with approximately 50 acres. And then in 1989, Pete and Holly Aracastane acquired the 50-plus acres that are restricted by this contract. In reviewing the file for California Land Conservation Contract 214, it has come to the department's attention that there is not agricultural productivity on the land. The record indicates there has not been reportable income since 1992. A summary of the productivity records are included in your packet. I have sent 2 letters to the Aracastanes explaining the department's position and the intent to recommend a non-renewal, and I have spoken to Mrs. Aracastane as well. She believed that she was maintaining the property as an agricultural preserve for future agricultural uses. The Ag Advisory Committee met on September 9th and recommended that the board initiate a non-renewal on contract number 214. Therefore, I am seeking approval of a minute order authorizing the chair to execute a notice of non-renewal for California Land Conservation Contract number 214. I do not know if members of the family are in the audience for any questions. Otherwise, I can ask questions as you may have.
Questions from the board?
also move on the non-renewal.
Second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes on a 4-0-1. We now move to item number 11. This is discussion and possible action regarding a minute order authorizing chair to execute non-renewal of California Land Conservation Contract number 208. Voorhees.
Harold and Lois Truitt established this contract number 208 in 1986. In 2001, Elka Voorhees purchased the property. Once again, in reviewing the file for contract number 208, it has come to the department's attention that there has not been adequate agricultural production since 1995. In 1995, there was a report of a slightly over $1,000. They have some acres of grapes on the property, but they lost the crop due to a late freeze. In 1996, there is a report of $600 ag productivity. In 97, there was no report submitted. In 98, there was no income reported, but they did state that there were 10 acres of grapes and 3 acres for livestock. The report stated that there were 7 cows on the property for 90 days and 5 calves on the pasture. From 1999 to 2007, there has not been any report submitted to the department. I sent 2 letters to Elka Voorhees explaining the possibility of this non-renewal and my recommendation that I will present to the board for non-renewal. And I spoke to Mrs. Voorhees' sister Barbara sometime a few weeks ago regarding this non-renewal. The Ag Advisory Committee met on April 15th and recommended that the board initiate a non-renewal on contract number 208. Therefore, I am seeking approval of a minute order authorizing the chair to execute the notice of non-renewal for California Land Conservation Contract number 208. And once again, I do not know if there's any family members in the audience that would like to address this. She's not a family member.
Apparently not.
I'll
All right.
move this non-renewal.
Second.
Okay, those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes on a 4-0-1.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to a review of correspondence reports on various matters of concern. We'll start with Supervisor Tryon.
I do not have anything to bring before the board, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Callaway.
I have, on board-appointed items, I have Calaveras Public Power Authority meeting this week. And I will be in Bear Valley for the EIR on the project, Tanasketter project, because it has an impact on the Highway 4 corridor through the EIR, through Arnold being the bottleneck, and down into Murphy's. And just a reminder, there's the frog ride on Sunday for a fundraiser for Feeney Park. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Thomas.
Okay. Don't have any meetings to report in the future, but I do want to mention that I went on Saturday morning to the computer training class that we've been featuring at Bret Harte High School. There were 30 computers and 30 people sitting with bright faces and eager to learn new techniques, and I have to tell you that I learned a few myself, and it was really quite good. 3 or 4 county employees there, too. It was really pretty gratifying to see that, and we'll hopefully be able to expand upon this program and offer it to more people in the future. So it's good job.
I have a question. I have
Yes.
the Williamson Act on my calendar for Monday. Is there
There's a training at 10 o'clock on CalWorks.
at CalWorks?
There is a training schedule.
Is this the same one we went to in Fresno?
I believe so.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Okay, and as for me, am going to the Motherlode Job Training Board meeting in Sonora tomorrow. I'll be representing the board at the first 5 commission meeting on Friday, and I will be going to Montana the following week for the National Forest Foundation conference, in which all the projects that are similar to CHIPS, forest stewardship, fuel reduction, fire safe, economic renewal projects that are funded by the National Forest Foundation will be meeting there to exchange ideas and strategies for improving their services. So I will be missing all of next week in that effort. We'll be driving out to save money. Renting a hybrid vehicle, by the way.
So you won't be here on the 21st?
I will not. I will be missing the meeting of the 21st, as well as my office hours for Thursday.
We can meet next Tuesday, Madeline?
I need to stop for a second. So you'll be out the 21st. Supervisor Claudino will be out the 21st.
That's correct.
Are you gone the 21st? Okay.
No,
So
we had three. We'd worked this out well earlier.
It's all right. Tom can leave. I'll take his votes. I just wanted Madeline to RSVP to the library for next Tuesday. Russ, did you want to go? I want to go. Tom's going to go.
Set the list.
Mr. Lawton's going to go.
Yes, ma'am.
And can you please send my regrets? I've always attended that in the past, and if I weren't in Montana, I'd be there too.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any items of correspondence or matters of concern from administration?
My only concern is finding out what county council is going to say now.
Nothing here, sorry.
Come on, Madeline. All right. This concludes our meeting for the 14th. However, we do have a study session this afternoon on solid waste matters. Integrated waste management funding, actually, is the specific topic. That will commence at 1:30 in this chambers this afternoon.
Are we going to go to lunch?
Contrary to the first item on your screen, this is actually October the 14th, but other than that, I know everything else we see will be accurate. Carry away.
I was anticipating tomorrow because that's my first day of vacation. We have a short presentation. First, I'd like to tell you that almost every single person in the integrated waste management area of Public Works has had a part in putting this together, either the number crunching or the background information. And I'd like that to be recognized because they've spent pretty much the summer working on this to come up with as accurate information as we have at this time. I have a short presentation we'll go through here, and at the end of the presentation I have some other comments, and then we'll open it up to your questions. Okay, just a quick background. The integrated waste management system consists of a landfill, 6 transfer stations. There's 10 staff assigned to the landfill and disposal operations. We also have our diversion or recycling programs. That includes yard waste, tires, metals, mixed recycling, cardboard, and outreach programs. There are 9 full-time staff attributed to diversion. That's everybody from administrative staff to the people that are actually separating materials at the landfill and the transfer stations. We have a household hazardous waste facility that's a 7-day-a-week operation. We have $6 million worth of capital equipment. It has an average life cycle of 10 years, and that's everything from bins to trucks to bulldozers. And then we have our construction projects. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the landfill, it's one long canyon broken into 4 phases, and within each phase there's 2 elements. There's 3 construction events per phase. 2 builds and 1 close, and each construction event is dependent on the waste generated and the cell capacity, so we can actually predict, based on our waste streams, when we'll be working in each of these cell areas, either constructing them for upcoming waste or closing them when they're filled. The study session outlined today is going to go through the problems, the causes of the problems, and then we're going to explain a little more in detail about how the problems came to be where they are today. This will include everything from operations to revenues to inflation and diversion programs. Then lastly, we'll talk about some of the proposed solutions, and we'll give you a conclusion, and then I'll give you a couple other examples, and we'll open it up for questions at that point. Okay, here's our first problem. Operational expenses alone exceed all the revenues. Every bit of money we take in currently goes to operations budget. Our operation budget is above what you're generating annually. The revenue increases do not meet our cost increases because of inflation, unit cost escalation for things like construction. We had estimates in construction of cell 1 closure go up by 75%. And then growing diversion programs. Our recycling programs and diversion programs have been successful to the point where they have consumed a lot of revenue. Solutions that we looked at internally, and we'll go into more detail on these, is overall reduction of costs. That could be everything from staffing to changing operations and perhaps even reducing some services. The other alternative is to, or in combination with that, is to increase revenues either through gate fees or other special fees. We've looked into that. And the third thing, the solution, is to segregate capital funds. What we've been finding out is, although you refer to them as designated funds for capital work, there's just one big pot of money. And there's nothing that prevents, there's no barriers in place, there's no action required by the board from somebody in Public Works Department from dipping into what are capital and closure costs to fund operating costs. This is a kind of short history. Back in 2003-04, when our expenses, which is the pink line going up, exceeded our revenues, and we've been operating almost on a deficit since that point. And if you had a 10-year graph, you would see that 3 or 4 years before these two lines crossed and expenses exceeded revenues, it was predicted. You could predict back earlier, 1999 to 2000, this was going to happen. Consequences of a growing operational deficit. Not quite as bad as the stock market. Fiscal year 04-05, there was no capital construction funds set aside. Typically what happened is you had your operating budget, whatever was left above and beyond what you needed for operations and diversion programs, you would take that excess amount of money and deposit it into your capital bucket. And what happened is they stopped depositing money. Fiscal year 07-08, equipment replacement funds were depleted. In May of this year, when we first saw that there was a huge problem with the revenues and the expenses, we literally wiped everything out of the budget that hadn't been purchased. No capital equipment, marketing programs, diversion programs, everything that was left in the budget that we hadn't already expended, we stopped spending. And we gave the staff the direction, in this current budget, no new programs until we had the funding fixed. 9-10 daily operations cannot be fully funded. What we're saying here is next fiscal year, the operating budget in its current configuration and current expense level, we do not have the money to operate. We'd have to reduce our operations by 50% in order to perform throughout the year. When we look at the unit costs exceeding inflation, if you look at the bottom, just to give you an idea of the changes between 2003 and 2008, transfer station contracts increased by 40%, personnel costs by 52%, petroleum-related products by almost 400%, Yard and wood waste contracts by almost 700%. A87 went up 85%, and diversion supplies went up by 180%. Inflation is 2.8%. There's no accommodation in our growth for inflation. The residential equivalent parcel fee has been set at $150 since 1991. Now, the interesting thing is the source reduction and recycling element that was prepared for the state of California contemplated the growth in the program to diversion programs, to other operating programs and capital requirements and closure costs, and gave us a projection that would take you almost to $270, knowing what they knew in 91. They also had a formula for adjusting the parcel fee down and increasing gate fees, and that wasn't pursued. There was another item in the 1991 that recognized that undeveloped parcels can contribute to the waste streams, and that wasn't considered. So we have a number of factors that took place, and the problem is we continued to be successful with diversion programs and operations, and we kept expanding it, and our residential equivalent fee didn't keep pace with it. Causation test, contributing factors. We've spent so much time this summer making sure that our numbers are accurate. First, we were concerned that maybe our filling rate was too fast, maybe we weren't getting compaction. So we did a photoaerometric survey where they actually measure the volume of unused capacity and compare it to the previous year's aerial photograph, as well as the deposited tons. And what that does is confirms for us that we're getting the compaction we need and that the fill rates for our cells are what we plan. We had a terrible feeling at first, based on some input, that our cell was filling at twice the rate it should be, and that wasn't the case. Residential population growth versus revenue growth. The population growth was at 4%, and revenue has only grown at 2%. The assumption at the time when this was developed was population would grow 4% and revenue would grow 4%. Waste generation and cell capacity, I already touched on that a little bit. We now landfill 47,000 tons a year, and we divert approximately 27,000 tons a year through recycling programs. Cost segregation per parcel. If you look at this, you can see that landfilling is costing us $117 per ton, or per parcel, excuse me. Diversion programs are costing us about $59 per parcel, and in 1999, you specifically earmarked $10 for household hazardous waste programs, diversion and recycling programs, and we're far in excess of that. That $17 is also included in that $10 you earmarked. Equipment and construction and reserves are the other elements that would make up the total amount of money that we need on the parcel fee. Current operational expenses. On the very last page of your handout, if you turn it just completely over, that's the one that has the memorandum on it. And on the back, there's two more columns that aren't reflected here. We wanted to show you where the operational costs came from that I had just explained to you. And what we did is we broke it down as a cost per residential equivalent. So if you're on a single-family residential property, this would be the amount you would pay. If you were on a higher use property, you'd pay a higher amount. But in this case, landfilling is $117.10 per residential equivalent. We contemplated you're directing us to look at raising landfill fees. And if we doubled the landfill fees, instead of having a revenue of $441,000, we had a revenue of $880,000. It takes this from $117 per residential equivalent to $100.50. So if you want to break that down in even more detail, if you look at the far right column in your handout, right now landfilling costs us $9.76 per residential equivalent. If we doubled our landfill fees, it would reduce that to $8.37 per residential equivalent, or a reduction of $1.39 a month. The second category is diversion. This is all of our programs. The revenues are deducted from the top. The yard and wood waste programs are a combination of the wood waste agreement in Arnold, California, the Sierra Forest products, and our own internal yard and wood programs at Red Hill and Rock Creek, and some contract grinding and hauling. So that's $1,041,000 a year. You approved this program to start with a subsidy, and I believe it was 2004 at $100,000 a year. And those two outside contracted programs are running about $500,000 to $600,000 a year, and the rest are internal programs operated by our staff. When you go down and you see what we get for beverage container, tires, mixed recycling, and metals, you might also hear that we're making money because scrap metal is so high. Well, the projected program costs are $310,000 per year. And if the scrap metal rates stay as high as they are now, we could anticipate getting about $200,000 in revenue, which is already included in that 241 at the top of that category. Below that's a household hazardous waste program. That's a 7-day-a-week operation, plus we have events in various areas of the community, I believe 4 times a year.
5 locations.
5 locations. So what I've done is, if you look at that last column on the per month cost of each of these programs, you can see when you break it down to residential equivalent what the costs are for individual parcels. Okay, what we're proposing to do is we want to look at the possibility of a 20% cut, and that would be in operational programs. We're going to wait for specific direction from the board, but we have contemplated some of your direction and have already started looking at things like not filling vacancies, much as we did in the roads budget this year, and really taking a hard look at the staff we have and if they're being utilized appropriately throughout the integrated waste management program. That's operations and administration. If we cut the operational expenses 20%, you can see the reductions there in both landfilling and diversion, household hazardous waste. And that would still only reduce it by $38 per parcel. Long-term and capital financial assurance. This is the amounts of money we need to meet our requirements to the state to provide financial assurance and constructing and opening and closing cells. And there's a parcel residential equivalency figure on the far right column. At the very bottom is an emergency reserve. This is something that's not in your current parcel tax. This is something that we feel is appropriate to put in here. In the past, there's been a contingency. It's not been a board-directed contingency, so anybody in charge of this budget that need to dip into that bucket have the authority to do so. We feel that the board should be requested to take action anytime somebody dips into this money, and that they would have to come to the board and have a specific reason for dipping into an emergency reserve. This reserve will help you to smooth out any fluctuations and give you time to anticipate any future parcel increases if they became necessary. One of the other things that we're concerned about is being able to segregate each of these elements in your future parcel residential equivalent fee, so that when money says it's earmarked for financial assurance, capital projects, assets, or operations, that's where it stays unless the board takes action otherwise. Nothing comes to you on an annual basis outside the Public Works budget. It's part of the budget. You may get a memo, a cover memo with your budget that says we contemplate there's enough money for at least through 2013 or 14. But nobody's done a financial test beyond 2014, and that's what we've done now. We would recommend that in the future, after the parcel fee has been adjusted by whatever rate you determine, that the Public Works staff has to bring a report to you once a year, done by an outside CPA at a cost of about $5,000 to determine the health of this fund so you're not surprised in the future. Long-term capital and financial assurance, we've looked at deferring some of the construction off, and we looked at the savings of about $61. That would be part of the 20% reduction. And that's something we'll explore in more detail depending on board direction. Savings is $20 per parcel if we were to implement the capital and financial assurance reductions. Capital projects are only funded through 2025, which is the next two events. Events are either constructing or closing cells, and that means that when you look at this, you're not going to be covered all the way to the end, but you're covered for a few years until we can get a handle on this. Here's capital projects funding. Here's the next two events. The yellow boxes on the screen represent a closing of a cell or constructing of a cell. And as you can see, the capital events continue to increase and the fund balance will start to go down. Crossover line is in 2031, it looks like. Parcel fee options. The current unfunded system, the current residential equivalent is $150. Extreme cuts and building in 5 years of inflation, you could go to $230 now. But if you went with the current system, no cuts and no inflationary increase, it would be around $290. And if you went no cuts, current system, including 5 years inflation, it would go to about $320. Staff is still recommending $300 per parcel equivalency because with inflation, you're going to be at that number anyway within a few years. And depending on the type and number of cuts you propose for us to look into, that number could change and we'd bring you back alternatives with different levels of parcel fees. This is a segregation of funds. This is how they are now. This is what we're talking about when we say segregate things out. There should be no spillover. When you have these financial funds segregated, you shouldn't be able to dip into the savings account without permission from the board. Board directive. Proposed solution. Connor already talked about these, but this is a summary. 20% targeted reduction across operations. Revenues increased by the parcel fee and fiscal controls. That's it. I have one other thing as an example. One of the things that we've heard from a number of people is things like raising the appliance charge. We don't charge for disposal of appliances now. We take in about 7,600 appliances a year. And if we were to charge $10 each, that only generates $76,000, which is only a savings per month of about 24 cents per residential equivalent parcel. If you weigh against that and you say we still want to go with a $10 appliance fee, we predict about 10% of those appliances will never make it to a transfer station, will never make it to Rock Creek, but they'll wind up somewhere in the county or in the national forest. If they wind up alongside the road, you respond to 2 people in a pickup to pick up a washer or a dryer or any other appliance, and our fully loaded cost of sending 2 people out in a pickup somewhere in the county to do that is about $170. So you would exceed, just with 10% of them being tossed out, you would exceed your revenue by a figure of almost $50,000. We have a sheet called Myths and Rumors. The staff prepared this because we get calls every day with other ideas, and people are asking if we've looked at certain things. So I'd like to go over them. This will be a little bit repetitive, but some of the myths and rumors have been dispelled in the bigger document, but here's some. Filling too fast. Waste generation, it was tested along with the handling of that waste to determine capacity and configuration. People felt that we were filling too fast, and that's why the prices were going up. That's not true. The landfill staff are handling the trash and compacting it at a fill rate that exceeds industry standards for compaction. Population growth equals revenue growth. Population is growing at roughly 4% annually, while parcel fees are growing at roughly 2% annually. This is because some population growth can be attributed to birth rates, not new homes and new occupants in the county. You could have a family that started out as 2 and now be 5. The population increased by 3, but that doesn't change the parcel fee residential equivalent. Selling space. I've heard this from a number of people wanting to sell capacity now to either adjacent counties or somebody else and offset some of our costs. I would tell you that you can't buy back what you sell. It'd be like Social Security and Medicare. I think they said the latest number is $55 trillion hanging out there. If you sell capacity now, you're going to give away part of your future. And when it comes time, whether there's an alternative to landfilling or not, if you still need that landfill, you can't buy that space back with all the money you've been given for it. Closure project for Phase 1 delay. This closure is required by the California Integrated Waste Management Board. Some people have recommended to us to defer this. We've already moved it out. We still have a construction of a cell that has to overlap with a closure, and we have to use the funds set aside. And if we didn't use these closure funds for closure, it would just allow us to continue our operating budget at a deficit. We're making money on metals. I already discussed that. We're not making money on metals. We're just not losing as much money. But it's a diversion program, just like yard and wood waste and the other programs that are required by the California Integrated Waste Management Board. We have a target of 50% diversion. We're not there yet. I think we're between 46 and 47 right now. And there is a move afoot in Sacramento for zero waste at some point in the future, and I don't even think that's achievable. Increased diversion reduces landfilling. People say, well, if you increase your recycling programs, we won't have to landfill it. There's many things that are currently being recycled without us, and there's tonnage that's not going into the landfill, so we can't take credit for increased diversion programs if it doesn't come into the landfill. Proposition 218 requires a vote. In your handout, you'll see that there's a explanation in there. What happens with Proposition 218 is when it was passed by California voters, it said if you established a fee, it had to be related directly to a use. You had a residential equivalent fee in place since 1991. It was in place when Prop 218 was passed. What you are required to do now is you're required to notify the parcel holders, notify the business, the landowners, of a hearing. You're to hold a public hearing. There can be protests and there can be votes, and if a majority of the people protest it through the written ballot or through the verbal process, then you would have to delay it. I'm comfortable in telling you that we ran this by County Council. David Sirius reviewed it, and there's a citation in your section on the memo that talks about your ability to hold this hearing without going to a vote. And that's the last thing on my list. That's all the rumors, huh? Not all of them, just the ones that we can reveal publicly.
All right. Any questions from the board at this time?
Mike, when you talk about per parcel, you're talking about improved parcel?
That's correct. Improved parcels only. We do not collect money for unimproved parcels, which is something that's being looked at. We also don't collect for construction prior to occupancy. So if you built a home or a subdivision, we don't collect any money from you until you actually occupy the home and go onto the assessor's tax roll.
Okay. You talk about $5,000 for a CPA. What about having the grand jury's audit do that on a yearly or every 2-year basis?
I don't know enough about the auditing process they have, if it would be a certified public accountant or not. I think $5,000 is a small amount to pay for insurance.
Okay. And I thought the hazardous household waste, the 5 places once a year, was done with the grant, not out of our 150.
We have revenues that were reflected in that screen. I need to go backwards here.
It says gross costs less HHW revenues. No.
The very first event is covered under grant funds.
You still have
revenues. And the rest comes out of the parcel fee?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. The very first event was funded through grant funds, but the state doesn't currently have a grant to cover household hazardous waste events.
Okay. So we're paying for that.
If you look on the back page again on that attachment 2, our gross costs are $605,000, and it shows that we have revenues of $139,000. So there's a net cost of that program of $465,000.
Where does that revenue come from? if it's a, I mean, if we're paying for it,
there are grant revenues that come in for the oil recycling program, which offset some of the household hazardous waste costs.
okay, so this is all-inclusive. It's not just for the once-a-year program. And
that's correct. That's all household hazardous waste.
Mike, when you said they, whoever they is, I'm assuming it was Public Works, stopped depositing money? Yeah. ABS? That'd be us?
Us, as in Public Works.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Are there any other board questions? I would like to open it up for public comment at some point, but let's start with our questions and then move to comment, and we'll bring it back for board deliberations.
There was about a third slide in on this presentation that had a graph showing the trend line on revenues and expenses. Okay, there. Well, let's see. The printed materials show us that we've got almost $4 million in revenues.
What this the revenues here are the revenues that had the funds been segregated, then 70% of the revenues would have gone to operations. 30% would have gone to capital projects, equipment replacement, and reserve. So this shows 30% of the revenues. I mean, excuse me, 70% of the revenues. So you really cannot spend all the revenues on basic operations, which includes landfilling, diversion, and hazardous household waste, because then you can never replace your equipment. You can't build or close cells. So that's what this demonstrates. This is 70% of the revenues. So if you take $4 million, 70% of that is $2.8 million, and they're spending $5 million. Problem.
Michael, since this diversion happened back in 2003 and 2004, and I don't know where in your day, why are we just now learning that we have been in an operational deficit position? Because as you point out in your handout here, without finding exactly where it is, that basically we were not anticipating a deficit. I think we thought we were good through 2012 anyway, and here we are 2008. And one of the reasons you stayed in here is you had significantly increased operating costs over what were anticipated. What is the reason for the significant increase in operating costs?
Diversion programs would be the number one reason for the expansion of the diversion. But to point out to you, so you have a little bit more of a background, in the handout, at the top of page 3 of 11, there was a report that went to the board.
Wait a second, let me get there. Okay, I'm with you.
They forwarded a report to the board that said, based on long-term cash flow projections, which were last updated in 2006, the parcel fee appears sufficient to meet anticipated cash flow through 2012 and 13. Then it says, while they continue to show balances through the near term, future funding for the next cell scheduled for construction in 2015 cannot clearly be demonstrated. And what that meant is they were already starting to dip into the operational revenues and take it from capital. They cited in that memo at that time the shift results from 3 primary factors. Waste generation is increasing faster than revenue. The the success of two specific diversion programs, universal waste and no-fee wood yard waste, is exceeding all expectations and dramatic increases in operating costs. They went on to say in May 2007 that changes to regulatory conditions, landfill gas recovery, and the adequate planning for long-term cash flow, Public Works would be requesting a study session with the board during fiscal year 08-09. I came in October, and when we started doing the budget preparation, I think it would be in February or March, we started looking at this, and this was the first time anybody had actually sat down and run the numbers. And we started running them, and that's when we made the decisions to stop funding things. They knew early on there were problems, and they looked at them, but what they didn't do is they didn't look beyond 2014, and they didn't look at how fast the operating programs were eating up that capital bucket of money. They being Public Works.
A breakdown on the, I sort of like the way you put number 2. The success has basically bankrupted us. Usually success means that
well, you can be successful and unsuccessful.
but you say the success of two specific diversion programs, universal waste and the wood yard waste. Are you going to be able to break those out for us, as exactly what universal waste includes and costs, and versus what wood yard waste?
If you look at the last page of your attachment, flip it over, you will see under diversion, we broke every program up. We have yard and wood waste under a net expense.
Get there. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay.
The second category is diversion under net expenses. Each program is broken out: yard and wood waste, beverage container recycling, tires, mixed recycling, metals, cardboard, and outreach. So you can look at it as the cost per residential.
When you say universal waste, that's everything other than yard and wood waste?
Universal waste is a subcomponent of household hazardous waste, and so it is not broken out in the sheet. It is specifically electronics, fluorescent lamps, batteries, aerosol cans.
When you under net expenses here, under diversion, I understand yard and wood waste program, that's $1 million a year. And then you list a bunch of others, you know, tires, metals, cardboard, et cetera. What component is that a component of? What are these individual items a component of as far as the diversion program? Or they just stand alone? I mean, you say we have universal waste, and
universal waste is a legal term established by the state of California that is a subset of household hazardous waste, not of recycling diversion. So it's not a solid waste. And what we have seen over the last several years is any number of things that we used to consider solid waste, most of the universal waste would be a perfect example, electronics, moved out of the solid waste category and moved into the hazardous waste category. And the cost of handling hazardous waste is tenfold plus what it costs to handle solid waste.
okay.
But just to clarify one more time, universal waste is only a subset of the hazardous waste component that you have here as a total number. It hasn't been broken out in this spreadsheet. It could be.
Okay. Two other quick questions then. Tuolumne County, I understand, ships their waste to Nevada. Is that still correct? And have you checked Amador and Tuolumne counties as to what the cost of their solid waste programs are and how they're basically put together?
What I can share is not confirmed, but through discussions I've had, Tuolumne is running at in excess of $90 per ton as a gate fee. They are transporting their waste to Forward landfill, and at $40 per ton, or $40 is
Well, what's it
plus.
what's it on a basic residential equivalency, since that's the term we're using?
Unfortunately, the way in which we fund our system and the way in which Tuolumne and Amador fund their system are not comparative. Those counties, and indeed most counties around the state of California, fund using gate fees, which is to say you pay at the gate for waste that you bring in, and it may vary based on the material.
And do they weigh it? You're saying this is by ton?
In most cases, yes, they're going to weigh it, though often when you have smaller vehicles, pickups, small trailers, you might have a set rate based on an
Otherwise,
estimate.
you have to have a set of scales. You got to weigh on, dump your garbage, come back, weigh off, and then determine the weight of the garbage.
It's not every user of the facilities that is weighed. So typically you have a set charge, and actually we have a hauler here who could speak to Amador's actual gate fees, but you just weigh a subset. You know, if a vehicle is X or greater in size, you weigh it in and out. But if it's your standard car or pickup or small trailer, you probably have a set fee.
Okay. One of the reasons we did not want to do a gate fee, one of several reasons, is it provides a certain incentive to not bring the garbage to the landfill or the transfer station and dump it in the forest, dump it beside the road, dump it wherever. Do our neighboring counties that rely on gate fees, are they having a problem with garbage being dumped outside of the landfill or the transfer station, et cetera?
It is a universal problem. The state of California has a problem with illegal dumping. They have a task force put together to address illegal dumping. We are rare. It is one of the benefits of our funding mechanism that our illegal dumping is very low.
Okay.
And I would suggest to you that Tuolumne has an incredibly high rate of illegal dumping. If you look at their generation rates, they just don't average, which means that there's just...
What does Tuolumne charge per ton? What is their sort of...
I believe they're up to $95 per ton or that neighborhood. I don't know exactly what it is.
And what does an average household generate in an annual basis?
Our residential equivalent unit is based on 2 cans, 30 gallons each, picked up or disposed of one time per week. That works out to 15.5 cubic yards.
And so
that's it.
What's that equal in an annual tonnage?
Well, if it was compacted, it would probably be about 300 pounds per cubic yard, because it's just household refuse, which isn't a lot of heavy objects. So I don't know, 300 times 15 is 3,000, about a ton and a quarter. But that doesn't take into account remodeling, new carpet in your house, pine needles. Those are all other programs here that are picked up as far as the costs. So when you think about the residential equivalent unit was based on what was generated in your house. The feeling at the time the first residential equivalent unit was established is that the gate fees would be offsetting if you generated refuse above and beyond that on your property. And the gate fee, actually in the SRRE in 1991, there was a schedule that showed parcel tax starting at $150 per residential equivalent, and over the years, 8 or 9 years, the gate fee would make up for that, and they'd be able to reduce it down to 0 at some point in the future.
Just to add some clarification, I had some numbers Mike didn't have in terms of household generation. California's average per day generation is just over 12 pounds per day. If you calculate that out, it's about 2 tons a year.
So if you wanted to say Amador's charging $90 a ton, then that would be $180 in comparison to what, to say our $150. Is that an accurate, somewhat accurate statement anyway?
That would be a fair statement, but I would rather say more definitively, I'd have to weigh all of our services against what we offer as compared to what they don't offer.
We have a Cadillac system. There's no arguing that. We have all these transfer stations, and people like the transfer stations. They don't, people on the Highway 4 corridor where I'm from appreciate not having to drive to Rock Creek to dump your pickup once a week. Our wives don't like it when we do it once every 2 weeks, let alone once a month. But what you're basically saying is to maintain the system that we currently have and operate it as we have currently and historically operated it, or are operating it, the fee would need to go to somewhere around $300 a year from the current $150.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. If there are no other questions at this point, I would invite members of the audience who came to participate to come up and say their piece. Please step forward.
Question, Mike. Did you do any...
Please step up to the mic, identify yourself, and
I'm Dale Pilgrim.
Ask a question.
And I'm representing the Homeowner Association up in Arnold area. The question was, in your study, did you take a look at, with the assumption that with all of the CAL FIRE and the rest of the requirement for wood waste clearing and the alternatives being burning or dumping somewhere else, if there was an assumption like $20 per parcel, this would be not developed parcel. I don't know how many empty ones there are in the county, along with balancing that against a rate for just inflation and out the rest of your operations, how you came out budget-wise with that?
Actually, we looked at the unimproved parcel because we know there are people that haven't built on their properties yet. And they come up once a year because they get noticed by CAL FIRE or Ebbets Pass Fire District in the case of the Arnold area. And in 1991, that was contemplated. But also in discussions with the county council, we've been told that if you change this process now, if you look at adding something or changing the residential equivalents, then you have to do a nexus study, and it has to be related directly to what the cost increases are. We weren't prepared to come to you today and recommend doing something like that because that would delay any Proposition 218 discussion and could result in, much like the RIM fee, it could be a study that takes 5 or 6 months and then it would have to be validated. So it's something to look at after the initial problems are taken care of. And we understand that CAL FIRE and Sierra Products, and there's a number of other people that have called and left messages that want us to continue that program. And that's why we didn't make any recommendations at this point. We wanted to get your direction, and we'll come back to you with a list of items that we can propose, and then you can deliberate those.
But Mike, under 218, that is a nexus. You can't raise it unless, it has to be a direct correlation, and it can only fund that which you're increasing.
Yes. What would happen, though, and David can jump in because I got my information from him, is once you start tinkering with it to add something that's not in there currently, the whole process becomes subject to a test.
So what if you, on the unimproved parcels, no, it's not going to work. Because then you'd be asking Millers, for example, to say, where were you, was this an improved or unimproved lot, of which I have both, and I'd say, well, it's the improved lot, of course. So...
Mine too.
When you start getting into that.
One of the other things, and I just briefly touched on this, is we looked at the amount of debris that's generated by new construction and remodeling. Remodeling is covered under the parcel fee because you're self-hauling your materials to Rock Creek. But on new construction, we do not assess that fee, that parcel fee, until occupancy. So, and it could be a one unit, it could be one house being built, or it could be 10. They are generating refuse in many respects, and they're paying either through a hauler and disposing of it at Rock Creek. But we believe, and a lot of other agencies have started doing this, is you assess a fee at the time the building permit is pulled, and you require them to do a construction and demolition plan, and you require them to abide by certain things, and you assess a fee for that. And that could generate money once we get out of the current real estate slump.
I thought we had done an advertising campaign, and it had been working to get construction. They would get debris boxes. Is that kind of...
We get debris boxes, and depending on the material that's in them, they go to Rock Creek, and they're dumped, and they're sorted, but the recovery rate is very low. There's programs, and I don't have the information available right here, but if you look at the city of Portland, Oregon, city of Palo Alto, they have 3 or 4 pages devoted to the permits and the requirements for construction and demolition recycling. What they do offer is they're in an urban area, so they have more outlets for the reuse of materials, but that doesn't mean that we can't minimize it here through some process of segregating it in bins on the job site.
Is that something cost-effective that we would want to look at?
Cost-effective would be from the perspective that we wouldn't incur the cost of them delivering it and us sorting it. They would be required to sort it on site and send the materials appropriately to other places, which is what happens in other cities. Hopefully not beside the road.
Did you have a follow-up that you wanted to ask?
No, I was just looking for a rough number. I wasn't looking for new ballots, new initiatives, and all that. I just don't know how many empty parcels there are times $20 and how much that offsets the $1 million there to give you a little bit of a jump on the yard waste. I wouldn't pursue it if it got me $200,000. If it gets me $700,000, which might be my guess, by the way, then I'd say it might be something worth pursuing.
I'm shooting from the hip here, but since there's on the yard and wood waste programs, that's all of them, not just the unimproved parcel. And it shows a cost of $39 per residential equivalent, and then you break that down, it's $3.26 a month. So if we were to do a study and we were to look at the whole process of residential equivalent and look at complying with Prop 218, it would have to be somewhere between 40 and a greater amount on an annual basis just to be cost recovery.
Okay, were there other questions or comments from attendees here? All right, we'll bring it back for board discussion. Any reaction to these proposals?
Well, I'd like to think on it for a little bit. Study the numbers.
Yeah, it is.
Talk to staff. See if we can't figure out how to cut the fee. Unlikely.
I mean, I agree with Tom. I don't think now's not the, of course, never is the time. But what are some of the other permutations that we could do, like dumping ice boxes, large appliances? We made a change in the tire program. I mean, I don't remember the details now. Maybe we need to go back to that. Yard waste, at least in the Ebbets Pass corridor, is really critical, and we've been highly impacted because of the changes in CAL FIRE. What are some kinds of things that we could do in that area, because over $1 million for 3 sites, Millers, California, and Red Hill.
Plus Rock Creek landfill. That's all of our wood waste operations.
Okay.
That's not just those 3 areas.
Oh, okay.
So anybody that lives in the west side of the county that brings in tree parts, yard or wood waste, that all goes into that program.
So would it behoove us to buy land to do a Red Hill up in the Ebbets Pass corridor? Would that be an option?
I'd be happy to put that on the look-at list.
I mean, everything's on the table, I understand
Yes.
that. And one of the contracts with the two in Ebbets Pass up, we're paying $8 a cubic yard in Ebbets Pass to those two businesses, which really serve a huge benefit.
We anticipate that we're going to need the $300 and 20% cost reduction plan to make this work.
Plus.
So, yes, that's correct. Because of the next 5 years of inflation, so we don't have to come back here and have this conversation again. We're shooting for 20%, and we know that is going to be real. That we're going to bring that plan. We're going to ask you to direct us to do that. Whether or not we can actually implement 20% worth of cuts is going to be challenging, to say the least. So at least 10% may happen. So we're already anticipating this is going to be the target. We may be effectively, without cutting programs, be able to hit 8 or 10%, and then ask you to make some harder decisions if you want us to do more. So $300 is going to require all of that. Jonathan did a rough calculation on the generation per. You want to speak to that? One of the questions that was asked.
Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and leave that for further calculation.
I just have a question. You said in 0910, operations cannot be funded.
That's
with
correct.
where we are. Is that net the cell, or does that include the cell?
We count operations as landfilling, diversion, and household hazardous waste. If you were to ask me when I say next year operations cannot be fully funded with 70% of the revenues, I would start, and if I had to do a hard cut, right, just start slashing, which I wouldn't recommend. But if you said we're not going to raise the parcel fee, then we have to take a hard look at this. Clearly, we're not going to shut down the landfill. We're going to have to cut the yard and wood waste program that exists now. It's basically operating at $5 million, and it takes in $2.5 million. So we're going to have to look at these numbers right here that are on the screen and find $2.5 million if we don't raise the fee.
But we're going to spend $3 million for the cell, to close the cell out.
That's a very interesting thing, because it's really popular for people to say, let's not do the closure, which is required. And I'm not saying
that. I'm just looking at the dollars.
This is what has happened. We have $3.3 million in the bank right now in the capital fund, the designated fund.
Okay.
The cell closure is going to cost $3 million. So basically, the capital funds are going to be exhausted once that happens. Part of the concern that several of us have in our department is that $3 million, it's going to take us about 2 years to do the closure. If they continue to operate at a deficit, the pressure to spend that money on routine operations is going to be greater than our ability to hold the flood back. So we already this year, with our own internal staff, struggled with the fact that you guys, $5 million is the most. This yard and wood waste program, the two contracts alone, the staff asked for $660,000 as opposed to $500,000, and basically we had to say no. If that means that yard and wood waste is only 9 months out of the year, that's what has to happen. These programs are continuing to grow, and the expenses are continuing to escalate. And because the funds aren't segregated, what's going to happen is, first, you're not going to do the closure, and maybe we could push that off a couple years. But the next thing is the next cell. We're not going to be able to build it. In addition to that, $500,000 a year, we should be replacing our equipment, and we have not been doing that for several years. One of the problems that what's costing a lot in this yard and wood waste and this metals is we're operating a 1999 piece of equipment at $4 a gallon. If that piece of equipment was replaced, perhaps we could find something that got better fuel. There's a number of things we need to look at to hit those cost reductions. So we're asking the board to direct us to find 20% of the cuts, basically telling you we need to do this, you need to direct our staff and us to do it. We think we can do it without depleting all capital funds. It's it's not a good plan to not replace your equipment, not build your future projects, and shut down the landfill because some of these other competing interests. It's really easy. It's just like our own lives. It's really easy for our daily expenses to take all of our future capital monies. So that's the hard sell. It's difficult for our own staff to take a look at that.
So do I understand you to say for the two sites in Ebbets Pass, staff's requesting $660,000.
When we were working on the preliminary budget, that's what they requested. Mike and I basically said, no.
I mean, we're thinking in the Ebbets Pass area, present company excluded, that most people have done a lot of their 30 to 100 foot the last couple of years, that there should be, and we won't know that till we go through another cycle, but there should be a reduction in the amount that goes to the wood waste sites if people have been, and Ebbets Pass and CAL FIRE have been pretty strict. So
one of the things we've looked at is that program used to be seasonal and expanded to be year-round. And the notices start going out in May to remind people to clean their lots. And then CAL FIRE and local fire districts do their compliance inspections in June. And then they issue citations just prior to Labor Day weekend. So we're looking at the alternative of operating a yard and wood waste program up in those areas from May 1st through October 30th. That'd be 6 months a year as opposed to 12 months. Because frankly, once the weather changes, the outside work goes down. I don't know to what amount. We haven't gone to that level of detail, but that's one thing we have looked at.
Any other comments from the board?
In your memo, Michael, you stated on page 5 of 11 here, the other element included in the proposed financial scenario, which is the one in front of us, I assume, is the purchase of a replacement site in 2045 when it is anticipated that Rock Creek will have reached total capacity. How much money are you projecting out of the residential equivalency is going to go to replace the Rock Creek facility?
When we did our calculations, which is on attachment 1, which is the inside of the last page, we show a build new Class 2 landfill in the year 2045, and we funded it at $8 million. I haven't broken it down to the residential equivalent.
I would like to speak a little bit to that, Mr. Tryon. We first looked at this because operating expenses were absorbing all the capital expenses. So we said, what would happen if we built out for the whole life of Rock Creek? And so that was attachment 1 came along. Then as we talked about this more and we need to continue this analysis, we said, well, it's really not feasible for us to make full projections out to 2055 and ask the board to designate $2 million a year, go into a fund to make that happen, because a lot could happen between now and then that we have no idea. One thing, waste generation could drop or grow. So what we're asking is, instead of $2 million, let's set aside $1 million a year that gets us out to the next 2 events at 2025. So basically we're only asking for half in the $300. And at that point, we're going to look at some alternatives and how to extend the life of those cells. There may be a lot of things we have not even considered. There were some options brought up just off brainstorming in 5 minutes, which I won't put you through because they haven't been tested yet. But each time we extend the life of one of these cells and basically spread out one of these yellow events, that buys us time and reduces costs and minimizes that. So we're just going to cut those finances in half, ask for $1 million, let us fund the next 2 events. When I say fund the next 2 events, that means $1 million is going to go into a separate segregated capital improvement fund that operations cannot absorb on their daily expenses. And as that fund builds, and the board is going to have to tolerate, or the staff as well, that fund is going to build up to $10 million. So when people are yelling and screaming and say, we need $500,000 for a new program, or we need $500,000 for a new piece of equipment, we're all going to have to band together and say no, because in 2018 we're going to have to build a cell. So
why is that cell in 2018 gone from it was 3 or 3.5 million to $7 million?
That's a really great question. And it also is pushed out 4 years. So originally it was at 2014, and the last financial projections which were presented to the board. The engineering staff did waste generation analysis and the capacity. of the existing cell and determined that it isn't going to need to be built till 2018. So that was good news. They found 4 more years just by looking at. The other thing is we looked at construction costs today versus when that projection was put together 6 years ago. Current construction costs, we're estimating 175 million sunk costs. I'm sorry, million. 170. Say the number for me. Thank you. 1.75 million for when the contractor comes out. That's your sunk setup cost, and then $3 per cubic yard. This is my teammate here. To estimate the cost, and that's based on more recent construction in the industry. And that was another hit that we took. That closure at $3.3 million was originally in the last financial analysis that the board received at $2.5 million. So yeah, that was a big surprise to us that number was going to need to change.
There are 2 factors I'm interested in questioning, I guess. One has to do with anticipated growth rates of what materials are deposited. I think that probably is attached to the current thinking, or what was the current thinking on the expanded population and number of new places. The other has to do with the inflation factor, which you calculated at 3. If the economy, and that one of the reasons I think that we're feeling a little bit non-committal in this regard is that many of our presumptions may turn out not to be quite what we thought. And in addition, of course, we're reticent before we know what the $700 billion actually, whether any of it finds its way to Calaveras County for homeowners that are in jeopardy. We're somewhat disinclined to add to the burden. We should know more about these things if we're in a deflationary mode for a period, or if growth estimates are altered by the financing issues or the economy as a whole. How long, given the ambiguities in some of these factors and the timelines that you anticipate us being in such a hole that we can't get out of it, what do you think is an appropriate timeline for this board to give you some definitive answers on this?
Wow, that wasn't. I thought you weren't asking me.
No, I'm not asking you to recalculate, but I'm asking you to.
60 days. I do want to speak to a couple of the things that you brought up. The waste generation, we did know that in the past few years, there's been the population boom up in the construction boom, which impacted waste generation. It also impacted our revenues. So what we did is looked at a 19-year timeline, sort of like your stock market.
Smoothed it out.
Right, we smoothed it out over time because we did not want those strange fluctuations to tell you that's today's picture. Clearly it's not. There were other times over the past 19 years where there was a drop in population and a drop in waste generation. So
you're confident in those figures forward, even...
Confident's a funny word, but
yes.
Yes. Not to an engineered level, but to a business level. So that would be mine. Also, inflation rate, we looked at, it's averaging 2.8% over 5 years. So we could go back 20 years the same. We do understand that there's going to be some funny things happening in our economy coming up with this $700 billion rescue. We're not asking for a rescue here. We're basically saying this is what the system costs. Do we want to pay for it at the state that it is? We think it is a Cadillac system. However, there's a lot of costs. We did call some of those other counties, and they said they would love to have this system because of the trash that's dumped all over the side of the road. So there is a trade-off there that residents will have to decide what they want to do. So we did look at a smoother timeline rather than unique, and I would suggest that that's probably going to be true in the future. Whatever's going to happen in the economy in the next couple years, we're trying to look at the landfill over a longer period, the next 20 years, not what the Congress is going to do that's going to impact us in the next 3 or 4 years.
All right, so you're suggesting that we get back to you within 60 days? Is that really a drop-dead date? Well, I would very much want to know what the overall economic picture is. I'm dealing with a lot of people who are hovering on the brink of losing their places, and even though this doesn't seem 150 a year might not seem like a lot, I can assure you that there are some places where it will feel that way, and I don't want to provide the straw that breaks any camel's back. That said, I favor, and I guess it's my turn to comment, I've felt that this has been a real model for getting out ahead of things. Certainly, the visionaries in 1991 took a look at the long-term needs and found a way to get that done in one move. And whether it lasted through 2012 or just 2004, it still was longer distance planning than we see around here for infrastructure by and large. So I don't look at this as the anomaly that's the wrong model. It's actually the thing that made sense at the time and still does moving forward. And what you're pointing out to us is that, similar to a board in 1991, we're faced with some long-term figures that don't square up, and we'll have to do something about it. You come to us at, after 2 of the worst weeks in quite a while in this country economically, and so I'm sure you share the general shell-shock nature of the context for the discussion. But I think 60 days makes sense to bring this back. I would share Supervisor Tryon's concern that we find every possible efficiency. I would add a couple of things, that some efficiencies may be done in a public-private partnership, that there are ways for some fledgling businesses and organizations in this county to possibly assist in ways that could make them some money. Some of our waste actually could be a profit center for some small businesses. The price of metal, for instance, has gone higher than it used to be, and I don't know whether we're going to be in deflation and that'll waste that too, but presuming that it stays high for a little while, it may be that we could look into some things to take some of the burden off of us as we're forced to deal with 20% or whatever cutbacks you're talking about. I really hope we can maintain the quality of this. It's a proud, in my view, it's a very proud sector in our government services. Sometimes it's taken for granted too much, but we have, if you take a look at surrounding counties, the system that you all, and I want to thank the people in this room who have been part of that, what you've provided is really, for a small rural county, pretty state-of-the-art. It's a good thing. I'd like to build on it, but I think it's going to take allies and partners and a broader look, not trying to deal with this solely as a county, but see who else we could bring into this. A lot of goodwill in trying to keep things clean, and I would hope we'd find some citizen support for this during hard times.
What I'd like to propose is that we spent some time this summer looking at ways that we could cut. We've priced some things out. We have a list that's already started, and we'll continue working on that list. And if informally other ideas come in from the public or the board while we're working on these, we can use that 60 days to start developing another menu of options for you.
Well, Mike, the 60 days is for what? It's for us to go under for Prop 218, to then have public meetings, to then for the 09-010 budget year?
What we don't have the detail on yet, and we just talked to the tax people, and we briefly talked to county council, is we need to find out how long it takes to set the process up. We haven't had time to see what it's going to require for notification of the parcel holders, how you hold the hearing, and through those, and formalize that process. And we need time to look at that and get a schedule back to you, as well as look at the programs.
Does administration have any advice on process and timelines?
I mean, the 60-day deadline that you've set or that you'd like to contemplate gives us, I think, ample room to do what we need to do.
All right, that's good. Russ?
Before we wind this down to the final conclusion here, I'd like to ask a couple of questions to help me understand better for during this 60 days. First thing I want to ask is, everything seemed to be okay until I got elected. Is that about a couple of years ago, everything went to...
It's not your fault.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thanks for that.
Don't let him off that easy. Come on.
We will take contributions.
If we could look at this back attachment 2, I want to make sure that I understand some of the things that I'm seeing here. On the capital projects, that $1,906,000 annually, is there any component in that for actually chugging around on bulldozers, or is all that just daily closing cells? Because what I'm trying to figure out is if there's any crossover or correlation between the landfill operations, the 2.5 million up at the top line, and that 1.9 million. Just explain to me what goes into that capital.
The capital projects for cell construction, opening and closing are actually, we put those out to bid for design, engineering, and construction, completely separate from our day-to-day operations, where we actually do the filling, compacting, and covering the refuse with 6 inches of dirt. When we're completely finished, it's like putting a cake together, and essentially you come in and the frosting is the legal requirements for an impermeable cover, adequate drainage, and protection and monitoring wells, and for, in the case of new construction, liners and those types of things. Those are really 2 separate things.
Okay, well, I have some knowledge of a horror story in Tuolumne County where the county did pay for all that, and the engineering was done, the compaction was done, everything was all capped off, and then it all slid down the hill, and they've got a huge price tag that's coming to the county, apparently. Do we have assurances and insurance that won't happen to us?
I'll defer to our capital projects engineer.
No?
I think looking at this slide, the emergency reserve down at the bottom of the slide, I think is at the board's discretion if we could open up funding of that nature in the event of a catastrophic failure in the design of a capital project.
Okay, so we would be putting $150,000 away each year for that. Okay. There's a sensitivity throughout the county on this particular issue. Some people think that I'm one that thinks it's a bargain. The other people don't think it's necessarily a bargain to spend $150 a year to have the ability to take your trash someplace. But there's another group that, and I don't know how large this is, but they pay subcontractors to come to their house and to pick up their household garbage and all that kind of stuff. I would think that is there a possibility that we could be looking at a formula going forward if we're going to have a large increase, like a doubling of this thing, and we have people that are paying they're paying that current $150 currently, and they're also paying $400 a year to have $35, $40 a month to have somebody come in. Can we give them a credit just hypothetically?
The funds that they're charged by the haulers now reflect the handling and the processing of the materials. As far as all the programs that we operate, they're still allowed to use the landfill. They're still allowed to use household hazardous waste. They're still allowed to use all the recycling programs. So really, when you talk about the system where people come to their house and collect it, whatever fee they charge is their fee for collection and processing of it.
But do those sub-haulers pay on a per tonnage basis? Is that where some of the $400,000 revenue comes from?
That's part of the $150 each of those residents pay annually for their trash. The hauler, they're simply paying for the trash to be picked up, and then it's hauled and dumped at Rock Creek. So they're paying the hauler, plus they're paying us $150 a year for the ability to dump it there. And
okay. So specifically,
there has been some discussion by people who have talked to us. One of the ideas is If we look at giving people discounts related to hauling, because there's a couple of benefits to that. This has been set up as a self-haul system. I don't know all the history around that. However, if they haul, it's probably, if they pay a hauler, it's cheaper for us to, it's what Mr. Walensky was saying, is letting small businesses take a part. Then we're not paying that $4 a gallon, and our staff person, we're not driving a truck one way empty and another way full. So there is some options related to that. Plus it reduces the risk to the hauler. The hauler takes on a risk when it is a if you choose system. Then they say they go into Valley Springs, into a neighborhood like La Quintana, not every homeowner has to use the system. But if the hauler was guaranteed that more people did because we were providing incentives, that would up that, and he may be able to look at his cost related to hauling. If he's skipping a house, he's got to charge more to the other houses. So that is one way for us to look at the system. But it does not, they are still hauling that trash to Rock Creek and paying $150 for that.
Okay, my last question here is about the transfer station operations. I'm not familiar with other transfer stations other than the one that I use in Copperopolis, but it's open 4 days a week. Are all the others operated similarly? They're not open 7 days a week, is that correct?
I can speak to Arnold. I assume that they are all 4-day operations.
I can speak for Wilseyville, it's 4.
Okay. And
Red Hill, Wilseyville, and Copper are 4 days a week, and San Andreas. Paloma is 3 with reduced hours, and Avery is 5. So there is some fluctuation there. It's based on service needs of the area.
have we reviewed that recently to see whether there are days upon which we get massive amounts, and some days we get, think about shortening the hours on the transfer stations? I mean, I'll probably get pummeled for that one, but...
The list that Mike referred to that is things that we've considered includes hours at the facilities.
Okay. Now, we don't run those facilities with our employees, is that correct? That's a subcontractor?
We run 2 of them, I believe.
We run the annexes at Wilseyville and Red Hill with our staff. The disposal portion is run with contractor staff. So it would be the yard and wood waste primarily, and the universal waste components that are run by our staff at Red Hill and Wilseyville.
Okay. Well, I said that was going to be my final thing, but this is truly going to be the final thing. We have near Copperopolis a 500-foot deep hole that is owned by, not too surprisingly, Waste Management. So have we ever talked to them about, they currently they're permitted to take construction waste there. Do we see, or has anybody ever looked at the potential savings or advantages of taking some of our construction waste to that facility?
I'm not aware of any evaluation of that alternative, but I can put it on the list.
Yeah, but they're in the process of getting their tire waste stream evaluated or acted upon by the state. But I don't know if the current operation is going to result in us having to buy an additional site by 2045 or something like that. I would think that we might be able to push that out a lot farther if we started taking some supplemental portion of our waste stream to the CAM facility. I mean, it's not permitted for household waste at this time, although they've got 200,000 square feet of warehouse space out there that could be an excellent recycling center. And got the certified water system and wastewater disposal system, and thousands of kilowatt of electricity coming in there. So please
on the list.
Please look at that. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further comments, I guess we'll bring this... I'm sorry. Please step forward, identify yourself, and say your piece.
Good afternoon. My name is John Dashner. I live in Arnold, California, and I speak for myself as a resident of Calaveras County, and 2, as a provider of services of removing yard waste on the mountain area. And I would ask you to really consider the waste yard wood waste program, of your diversion program. And it does go further into the year. After Labor Day, CAL FIRE issued a number of citations that are still being cleaned up, and there are only so many people who are licensed business people in this county that do that work. And some are backed up until November. Last year, I worked until the 1st of December, until the second snow. And there's a place that's needed to take that material. And I've done this as a part-time business for the last 5 years. I did it before the diversion program started, and I paid a fee to dump at Miller's Yard or the yard up the hill. And during that time, I noted there were other people who provided that service but got lost in the forest on the way to these dump sites. As Michael pointed out about refrigerators, and I used to see appliances, et cetera, dumped. And if we do away with this program and cut it off, say, the 1st of November or thereof, and the lots that are to be done, and people who are falling behind, and because of money demands, some people can't afford. I've had lots up to $3,000 that was a cost, 4 or 5 days with 5 people working to clear them. That's a great expense for a family. Some of them can only do it at a parcel. With the demand of 100 feet that we started with several years ago, and then we went to unimproved properties. And that is, I've taken 140 yards from one parcel, 1 acre parcel, to Miller's Yard. And that has really impacted his services and your cost. But that is not going to stop if we want to maintain fire safety in our county. And so I ask that you consider this program as being very necessary to where I live. And I live in the trees and the forest, and I'm very concerned. And the number of burn days last year were cut down, the year before they were cut down. In fact, Blue Lake Homeowners Association is even looking at putting a no burn in their area. So what's going to happen to those needles and products that come off of yards? They're going to have to be taken somewhere. And I would hope that there is a refuge facility that we can take them to, and that people won't be encouraged to take them and get lost on Love Creek or somewhere else. This year I've had to clean 4 driveways where people have dumped in unoccupied homes to just save the gasoline from driving down to Hill to Miller's Yard from Dorrington. So if this process is cut out and there is nowhere to go with this waste, I see a great hazard being created for public safety. So I would ask you just to really look at maintaining this program. I think it's very
So, John, because you're real familiar with that express, how do you propose we deal with the unimproved lots? Because unimproved lots are going to Miller's or Raleigh's, and they don't pay anything. So in essence, they're getting a free service where the improved parcels are at least paying something.
Well, I, as a property owner of improved and unimproved properties, I would have no problem in paying a small fee towards this benefit of the diversion program. And I think that an unimproved property owner should have the responsibility of being taxed or a fee.
Well, I guess let me ask. Leslie, we pay Miller's or Raleigh's $8 a cubic yard on top of whatever the monthly fee is. Is that right?
Yes, on top of the operational charge.
Right. So, John, you're familiar with the volume is $8 a cubic yard, same for unimproved parcels? Would that seem reasonable?
Yes, it would. And considering an unimproved parcel will only need to be cleaned every 2 to 3 years, but it's something that's going to be mandated. It's just not a one-time incident, in which a lot of people think it is. And it will be reoccurring, so for that, the demand will continue to be maybe not as great as last year or this year, but the coming year of 2009, the spring and summer, you will see a significant increase in bulk and material that has to be disposed of. But I would feel that $8 a yard is not an unusual fee. We were paying that before the diversion program started. But I thank you for your time and your due consideration.
Thank you. Sure.
Cindy Nugent, Avery, California. I want to, I agree with John. I think all these diversion programs are extremely important. I've only lived in Calaveras County 4 years, but I'm really proud to live here. I think it's very clean and nice, and I'd like to see it stay that way if we can.
Thank you.
Is that 2 votes for increase?
I heard one tentative one, depending on what the word "small," how you define that, and one that didn't comment at all on that. At any rate, I want to thank people for attending. We will hear back in 60 days. There will be a period where public input is certainly being solicited, so if you do have ideas that you'd like to put in, please send it to the department. For people watching this on television, I hope you'll also do some serious thinking about this, and let's get it right here in Calaveras.
There's a gentleman that apparently wants to...
Is there another person who wishes to step forward? I'm sorry.
Upcountry.
Come on up.
My name's Gene Miller, and what I'd like to know is, we're getting $8 a yard. How much does it cost the county per yard?
Anybody have that figure?
Well, we can calculate the tons. We can get it for you in just a moment. Here's the diversion sheet here. How many tons are being diverted for yard and wood waste? I had the diversion sheet.
Don't have it with us. So the question is, how many cubic yards go into a ton? Is that
No.
No.
Because, see, you're not paying us
What's
by
the unit
yard
cost?
until it's ground. See,
we'd have to break our yard and wood waste total here out and divide it by the number of yards. We do have it because it's collected by site. We just don't have it available.
Could we take Mr. Miller's contact information and get that answered?
yeah, but we're not talking yard waste. We're talking ground.
Okay.
Okay? Then you turn around, you're talking equipment. This is how much it's costing the county right now, but how much does it cost the county to grind this?
We have those numbers, but we don't have them with us. We can provide that back to you, and we can give it to Mr. Miller.
Okay, that would be appreciated, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, it's a good figure to get. Before we close, anybody else wish to address the board?
You know, I think, just speaking this is, as Steve said, a model program for the county. It's a Cadillac program. I think we all thought it was just kind of going along in perpetuity, and I think I can probably speak for the board that we're probably in shock at how off we are. I mean, it was a self-funded program. We were doing all these wonderful things. We had, 2 yard waste diversion programs in the Ebbets Pass area, and everything's great, and it's not. I'm in shock.
Can I say something?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
If Supervisor...
I'm fine.
I'm Frank Stone. I'm also a provider of the services for wood waste up the mountain. And I just would like to point out that CAL FIRE has pushed this 100-foot clearance in the last few years. And Ebbets Pass has been pushing their empty lot. There's 2 different subsidies there. And, this is going to all be done. The initial impact of these is the biggest part. You go into an empty lot. Once you get it clean, the maintenance issue on those empty lots are a fraction of the initial cleanup, and so that the wood waste you bring out initially is huge, but it's not always going to be like that. Once you get that initial cleanup done, then it's a maintenance issue, and it's going to drop substantially over the years and probably stay down. So it's skyrocketed over the last several years because of the push by CAL FIRE and Ebbets Pass to get this, forest debris and ladder fuel cleaned up. And I just didn't know if that was brought in, consideration for overall projection of the costs in the future. Eventually, it'll be done, and then it's a maintenance issue, other than the pine needles, which are, an every year thing. So that might be a consideration too.
I'm sure one business that ought to be starting up is the collection of pine needles and shredding of same for the blueberry farms that are springing up in the. We've got several going, and pine needles are actually a commodity in some places, I know. Little things like that might go a long way to augmenting some of your incomes, and my hope is there will be a lot of entrepreneurial thinking about the things that we've been wasting that might actually have value around here. If there's nobody else who wishes to speak, we'll adjourn this session for today and come back in roughly 60 days to try to make some decisions. Thank you.